allegiance. Tonight's invocation is being offered by Father Philip Brin of the St. Anne Catholic Church. He is the guest of Councilmember Buddy Baker.
Our help is in the name of the Lord who made the heavens and the earth. We pray. O Lord, we give thanks for the beauty of this world, for the magnificence of your creation, for a world of possibilities, for our imaginations, for our ability to dream and conceive of a world of harmony. We are thankful for the eyes that we have to see, hearts to understand, the ability to think, and the concern to care. Help us to take life one day at a time as we ask for your guidance and strength. We do not have yesterday or tomorrow, only today. Help us to remember the problems we encounter are but the opportunities that are put before us to use creative energies, making a better world for all. Almighty God, give this council the passion for truth, and with those truths, the wisdom to do the right thing. Grant us, Lord God, a vision of our city as you love and would have it, as your love would have it. A city where the weak are protected and none go hungry. A city where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them. A city where different races and cultures live in harmony with mutual respect. A city where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love. Give all of us the inspiration and courage to build that city and deliver us from the temptation to give way, to succumb to the naysayers, to the prophets of doom and gloom. For with your strength we can build that city of God. And so tonight as we come together, we ask your rich blessings upon all the men and women of this council and their families and loved ones. And your blessing upon all who come here tonight to present their views, to take part as citizens, to exercise the spirit of democracy and freedom. We respect and are grateful for all of members of this council for their public service to the people of Nashville. And may the richest blessings of Almighty God descend upon us all and remain with us now and always. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good luck. Hope you get home.
Without objection, we'll suspend the calling of the roll and ask the clerk to record the names of the members present throughout the meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of our June 17th meeting? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, the minutes will stand approved as written. Madam Clerk, are there any messages from the mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor. We have the following message from the mayor. Dear Vice Mayor and members of the Metropolitan Council, pursuant to the regulations of the Tennessee Comptroller's Office, when the Metropolitan Government undertakes a draw from one of our two commercial paper programs, the attached report must be submitted to the Metropolitan Council and presented at a meeting of that body before filed with the Comptroller. As you can see from the attached report, on June 5th, 2014, we issued $50 million of general obligation commercial paper. Please find a link to the city's investor relations page for additional information located in the packet on your desk. Thank you.
Thank you. If you are in the chamber, you need to have a seat, please. If you cannot find a seat, please go out to the mezzanine. Councilmember Langster, did you wish to be recognized?
Yes, Vice Mayor, would everyone stand with me, please, and let's have a moment of silence for Mr. James Utley, Sr. He spent many days, months, and years in this courthouse as a court officer. Amen. Thank you.
Councilmember Berry, elections and confirmations.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The Rules and Confirmations Committee considered 3 appointments this evening. First is the reappointment of the Reverend Rod Glatt to the Auditorium Commission. The second is the reappointment of Mr. Sam Howard to the Electric Power Board. And the third is the reappointment of Mr. Tom Curtis to the Employee Benefit Board. Those were approved 6-4, 0 against. And with that, I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Please stand when I call your name and remain standing. Reverend Rod Glatt, Sam Howard, Tom Curtis. On behalf of the entire Metropolitan Council, thank you for your willingness to serve our great city by volunteering your time and your expertise. Thank you very much. We are now at resolutions on public hearing. And just a reminder, if you are in the chamber, you need to find a seat. If you cannot find a seat in the chamber, please go to the mezzanine. There are now a few seats on the front row if those standing in the back corner wish to come down. We are now at the resolution on public hearing, RS 2014-1140, exempts Mitchell's Deli located at 1306B McGavock Pike from the minimum distance requirement for obtaining a beer permit. Councilmember Anthony Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Davis.
Committee report, please.
Councilmember Perdue.
Yes, ma'am, that was deferred by Rule 4-0, and I think that the councilman may have a reason for not being
Okay,
there.
Councilman Davis.
Yes, need to move to suspend the rules, please, with explanation.
Is the reason?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the committee. I was in here for our planning committee, and just a miscommunication mix-up. We were doing the duplex bill. It ran over and wasn't able to make it, and I apologize.
Is there any objection to a suspension of the rules? Seeing none. Councilman?
I'd like to move approval, please.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We're now at bills on public hearing. The first one is BL 2013-392, changes 39.09 acres from SP to RS 80 zoning for property located at Sawyer Brown Road, unnumbered, north of Meadow Lane Drive. If you are in the chamber, you need to be in a seat. If you cannot find a seat, please go to the mezzanine. Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move to defer this to the public hearing in September with a very brief explanation.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you. Without a sign, I would like to explain that this property, which was the site of one of the many 2010 landslides, was deemed an inactive SP last year. Yesterday, I learned that the sign was posted on the property in error. It had the wrong day, the wrong time, and the wrong location. And so given that, Mr. Cooper advised me that we needed to go ahead and defer this, and I would like to defer it to the September 2nd public hearing, which will follow the August 14th public hearing at the Planning Commission. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-772 amends the Metro Zoning Code to modify the conditions pertaining to lot size, setbacks, street standard, landscaping, and hours of operation for construction, demolition, landfills, and recycling facilities. Councilmember Weiner.
Open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Weiner.
Committee reports.
It hasn't gone.
Okay, I'm sorry. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. If you are in the chamber and you cannot find a seat, please go to the mezzanine. BL 2014-787 amends the Harpeth Village Commercial Plan Unit Development Overlay District for 1.12 acres of property located at 8002 Highway 100 to permit the construction of an automobile service facility. Councilmember Mitchell.
I move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Mitchell.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-799 changes .19 acres from R6 to SP zoning for property located at 1209 Hawkins Street to permit up to 4 residential units. Councilmember Stein.
On behalf of Councilwoman Gilmore, I would request the public hearing be opened.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, do you wish to speak in support? The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Stein.
On behalf of Councilwoman Gilmore, I move approval on second reading.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-800 changes .21 acres from R6 to RS 3.75 zoning for property located at Tennessee Avenue unnumbered, east of 51st Avenue North. Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Open for public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-801 makes provisions of the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to 5 acres of property located at 2805, 2807, 2808, 2809, 2810, 2811, 2812, 2813, 2814, 2815A, 2816, 2817 Blair Boulevard, and at 3201 Hillside Drive. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you. Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-802 changes .16 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 1102 Joseph Avenue to permit 1 single-family dwelling or a detached 2-family dwelling. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in support wishing to speak, please come to the lectern and state your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. I'm Roy Dell. I reside at 1657 Stokely Lane in Old Hickory. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time tonight. I know you've got a lot of items on the agenda, and there's probably a few that are going to have a lot of people speaking. I'll just point out that this is an approved plan. The Planning Commission approved this. This is more or less an infill lot. It's proposed to have 2 single-family dwellings. It has the proper neighborhood policy. It abuts mixed-use zoning. Of all the PUDs or all the SPs I have tonight, and I have several, this is probably the property that's most suited for this type of development. And so Councilman Davis, I've been working really hard with him. He's done a great job, and I'll just put this in his hands. Thank you.
Anyone in opposition wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Council. I'm Dane Forlines. I live at 805 North 2nd Street. And my comments this evening, prepared some comments. They're not directed at this particular development, but this type of development in general. The talk in our neighborhood is similar to the talk that I've heard in neighborhoods all over Nashville. Things are rapidly changing. Although our neighborhood has been evolving for several years, in the past 18 months we've seen a marked increase in new development. This development is different than in past years. It's bold, it's aggressive, and in many ways it's in conflict with characteristics most residents I talk to say they want to preserve. I'm not here to say that I oppose all change. Change is inevitable, especially in our magnificently dynamic city. But I do believe that we should be intentional about the kind of change that we'd like to see occur. In the past year, our council district has seen, to my count, 19 zoning request changes. I counted 2 in the previous year. That's not to mention development that's occurring by right within the existing zoning laws. That is rapid change. Our community is trying to understand and steward these changes. We're hosting conversations in homes. We're discussing issues at neighborhood meetings. We're participating in the Nashville Next process. But of course, like you all, with our jobs, families, and other community activities, it's hard to keep up with the rapid pace. In the meantime, we're up against heavily resourced developers, an obsolete detailed neighborhood design plan, and although Councilman Davis is a friend of mine, from what I see here tonight, an overpowering councilman. Neighborhood leaders are currently working with a nonprofit community organizer to inform and listen to residents' concerns about these issues, and our first district-wide forum is scheduled for August 2nd. I ask the council to give us time to do this well. We know that change is coming, but we want to ensure that change is not merely driven by the interests of developers. We want to hear the voices of the citizens of District 5 and work together to create a community that is respectful of everyone's interests. Please give us this chance and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brady Mills and I live at 234 Trutland Avenue. This zoning change would permit 2 houses on one 50-foot wide lot, which is a very small area. Residents who have lived in this area much longer than I have spent a lot of time providing input on the current community plan. And until a new plan is adopted, the East Nashville Community Plan should guide zoning and development in our neighborhood. Looking at the East Nashville Community Plan, I don't think that these tall, skinny homes are what was envisioned by myself, any of my neighbors, or any of the people who have lived here for longer than me. They are out of context with existing homes and are very disruptive to the look and feel of the neighborhood. Secondly, this use is not in line with the intent purpose of SP zoning. Specific plan zoning was created to address lots that have a unique set of circumstances and require a unique plan to address those circumstances. There is nothing unique about the lot at 1102 Joseph or the proposed plan. The proposed plan does not achieve anything except increased density by one home while circumventing the base zoning. I want to emphasize that I also am not opposed to increased density, but I do feel this is a very short-sighted and inefficient way to accomplish increased density. Density should not be accomplished through random spot zoning, but planned out in a thoughtful and intentional way in a way that seeks broad input from the residents and considers its impact on our quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terry Bear, 323 Forest Park. I got a little bit of information on this, and basically it seems to me, although it sounds like it's not something new, it is, it looks like it pretty much conforms to things. It's still a small lot, and in these neighborhoods, people are moving to some of these areas just because they've gotten out of other areas where they've been pushed out of because of the exact same development they want to push in this neighborhood here. And it keep having to move, people that have little resources having to keep moving and moving and moving just to stay within Davidson County is getting to be stressful. And one little development gets in, then in a few years, it's just totally, you'll look up over the road there, and it will be all these 3 or 4 story houses, very skinny houses, and nobody has any idea how to actually live in these places. And I just, which neighborhoods are we targeting? Everything towards the middle of the city of going out? Should everybody be scared that this neighborhood's here and the next neighborhood's the next neighborhood? I'm trying to be fair about this, but this doesn't sound like it's starting in the right direction. I think it should come from people that are in that neighborhood, make them aware of what the rules of coming to these hearings are, and that's where the conversation should start. And I'd say that vote against this, please.
The public hearing is closed. Councilmember Scott Davis.
I'd like to move for approval, and I apologize for the long explanation.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman.
We can sit here all day and talk about change. On third reading, I will be filing amendments. When talking to the neighbors on this section of Joseph, this section of Joseph sits right behind Dickerson Road, which is a major corridor. Third reading, I plan on submitting the amendments that the neighbors on that street and in the Cleveland Park neighborhood have suggested, and we're going to reach out again, and we're going to continue talking to the neighbors and adding changes for the third reading. One thing that was mentioned was changing the roof line. The developer agreed. Changing the style of the house, the developer agreed. Using maybe a different floor plan, the developer agreed. Building a privacy fence, the developer agreed. Also, changing the setback a little bit, if allowed, through the codes department, the developer agreed. Getting additional land for the lot next door, the developer agreed. The developer is doing backflips to accommodate. The houses aren't comparable to other homes. 20 feet wide may be skinny in some neighborhoods, and I'm sure it is skinny, but seeing some that are 15 to 17 feet wide, is definitely a step in the right direction. So hopefully we can keep talking and work out a compromise between the neighbors. And I'd like to move for approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-803 amends the Rolling Hills Pacific Plan District for 11.93 acres of property located at 3485 Hamilton Church Road to permit up to 56 single-family residential lots and 7 townhomes for 27 single-family lots, 16 cottage lots, and 8 townhomes were previously approved. Councilmember Dominic.
That was a nice ringtone there, but thank you, Vice Mayor. Move to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, do you wish to speak in support? Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Dominic.
On behalf of Councilman Duvall and residents of that area, I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-804 changes .18 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 515 South 13th Street to permit up to 2 dwelling units. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I would move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, do you wish to speak in support? Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval with brief explanation.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and members of the council. This bill, as you see, is similar to some other ones that are up, and this is a process that has had some discussion. There is some level of comfort, but prior to third reading, I just want to give everyone public notice that the neighborhood meeting we've been trying to have some additional conversations to take place, and the developer has been very open to meeting with them, so we look forward to having that all taken care of before third reading. So I just wanted to ensure anyone listening that if there are still concerns, we will have public processes available for those to be addressed. And with that, I would renew my motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-805 changes .19 acres from RS 7.5 to R8 zoning for property located at 3405 Meadow Court. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, do you wish to speak in support? Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-806 changes .18 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 1209 Montgomery Avenue to permit up to 2 single-family dwelling units on separate lots. Councilmember Scott Davis.
I apologize, Vice Mayor. Montgomery is one of the streets that was in the old county lines. The intention was to submit this bill. This bill is on the Planning Commission in July. I need to defer this.
For how many meetings?
I need to defer indefinitely.
Okay, we have a motion to defer indefinitely. Is there a second? All in favor of indefinite deferral, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is BL 2014-807, makes provisions to the Sylvan Park Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to 140 acres of property located along Colorado Avenue, Dakota Avenue, Idaho Avenue, Murphy Road, Nebraska Avenue, Nevada Avenue, Utah Avenue, Wyoming Avenue, 42nd Avenue North, 44th Avenue North, 45th Avenue North, 46th Avenue North, 47th Avenue North, 48th Avenue North, 49th Avenue North, 50th Avenue North, and 51st Avenue North, and north of Murphy Road. Councilmember Holloman.
Move to open the public hearing.
We will need to see the slides first since it was disapproved by the Planning Commission.
Okay, this is Bill 807. This is a request to apply the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to approximately 700 properties in the Sylvan Park neighborhood. This is the area outlined in red. On the north end is Nevada Avenue. On the south side, it goes from Nevada Avenue to Colorado, north-south, and then from 51st Avenue North to 42nd Avenue North, east to west. So it's a large area. This is the area shown outlined in red. It's adjacent to the Elkins Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District that is currently existing. And the properties are zoned RS 7.5, and there's a couple right in the center that are zoned SP for a neighborhood in the neighborhood center area. The policy for this area is T4 urban neighborhood maintenance, and that small neighborhood center in the middle is T4 urban neighborhood center, and then there's a small open space area as well. The Metro Historic Zoning Commission recommended approval on June 18th of this request. However, the Planning Commission disapproved this request at the June 26th Planning Commission meeting.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Thank you. Those in support wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. Our request is that you not be redundant and you do not repeat what the person in front of you said. Just give us your name and address, please.
My name is Robert Chatham. I live at 5109 Nevada in Sylvan Park. Thank you for letting me speak. I spoke here about 7 years ago when an overlay was proposed. I struck out that time. I hope I have better luck this time. I am in support of an overlay. When I addressed the council the last time this came up, virtually no homes had been torn down in my neighborhood. So it might have been an academic point at that point. Now it's not. In the last several years, I've seen on, it seems like a daily basis, homes torn down and homes constructed in the neighborhood that are out of character. Some of them are beautiful. I kind of envy them. A lot of them are way too big. You know, Joni Mitchell said, you pay parking lot to put, pay paradise to put a parking lot, and that's what's happening. My yard floods constantly now when we have a serious storm event. I know elderly neighbors that don't have gardens anymore because there's no sunlight. So I think that we need to have some common sense restrictions. I think this overlay addresses that. I believe, based on a very informal poll that I've taken, the majority of my neighbors support an overlay. I think that Sylvan Park, in my opinion, is the greatest neighborhood in the world. I'm very dismayed as to what's happening to it. It's kind of in your hands now whether or not you will help us preserve this wonderful neighborhood that has been such an integral part of making Nashville great. And I implore you to do the right thing and please pass this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ian Montgomery. I live on 4502 Park Avenue. We're going to hear a lot this evening about the practical points of this overlay and the legal implications of that, but I would like to offer a very personal, principled explanation of what this overlay is going to mean for this neighborhood as a native of that neighborhood. So from the day that my parents took me home from the hospital to the day that I left my parents' house, Sylvan Park has been, in many senses, the axis of my world. When I was a kid, I played ball at McCabe Park. When I was older, I did my Eagle project on that ball field. I learned to ride my first bike on the streets of Sylvan Park. I had my first kiss in a driveway on Wyoming. So despite the size of a city like Nashville, which was still formidable, even in those pre-boom days, growing up in a strong neighborhood community like Sylvan Park had many elements of that quintessentially American, small town kind of upbringing. In a lot of ways, I would liken my childhood to growing up in a kind of Norman Rockwell painting. And even though that sort of rosy innocence was something that I needed to correct a lot of as I have approached adulthood, there's been a lot of that has stayed with me. So I had the rapidly disappearing privilege of growing up with that quintessentially American kind of upbringing, where it takes a village. I grew up in not one, but many households. I'm 23 now, so it was in the 90s and the 2000s, right in the thick of our postmodern, plastic, ostentatious mass culture that we still got to grow up in handcrafted homes. Organic, venerable monuments to a more reasonable time when the working and middle classes, during and right after the Great Depression, wanted nothing to do with excess. The mere existence of these houses impresses upon us the greatest lessons of the greatest generation. Their wide porches speak of community bonds. Their size speaks of modesty. And their individual characters speak of taking a genuine pride, both in one's work for the sake of it and for the sake of families that bake each other cookies but aren't cookie cutter. This is what I mean by the small town values of the Sylvan Park neighborhood. And even as our city explodes with new opportunity and vigor, we Nashvillians still like to fancy ourselves as a big city with a small town heart. But by tearing down these historic homes, we are tearing out that heart. Everywhere, I see the mass production of soulless plastic McMansions bloated on one lot or two crowded together on one lot. And these structures, they smack of profiteering on the parts of developers and project this air of hyper-consumerism into a neighborhood that I know and love as middle class. I couldn't ask for a better symbol of sort of greedy capitalizing that, on another note, is sort of selling my entire generation down the river. So symbolic though it may be, in that fight, this is indeed the home front. I just want our beautiful neighborhood to nurture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please pass this overlay, I beg.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy M. I live at 4502B on Park Avenue. When we had the overlay the last time, I was against it. This time I have a full understanding of it, and it is different. This time it is meant to protect the integrity of our historic homes. I love the home that I live in. It was built in 1924. When I walk through my neighborhood, I love looking at all of the historical homes and the details. The new construction does not really fit any of these details. If I had wanted to live in a new home, I would have chosen one of the lovely homes that they have for sale in Madison or Mount Juliet, where new homes are constructed and have those type amenities. I think that some people are afraid that the council will not give them permission to add onto their historic home. My neighbors who are in the historic overlay already have gone to a meeting and been granted permission to go ahead and put an addition onto their home. They were even told that they could add onto it. So we don't need to be afraid that this overlay will tell you what you can and can't do to your home. It's guidelines to keep us in a historic, beautiful neighborhood. And I hope that we can continue to be historic Sylvan Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stephen Zern. I live on 3528 Murphy Road. So I've lived several places in the Sylvan Park area, but I'm actually here speaking for Mark and Audrey McEver, who live on 4200 Dakota. And I'll actually give you a briefer version of this. They are strong supporters of the overlay. They've lived in Sylvan Park for 4 years. They've watched several homes be destroyed, many specifically around their house, that they don't want to see continuing to be destroyed for future development. And their statement is essentially, once you lose your history, no amount of money can replace it. So on their behalf and my own, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Troy Duckett. My wife and I live at 4406 Wyoming Avenue in a house built in 1918. We've lived there for 7 years this September, and we're expecting our first child next week. Today, you're going to hear overlay opponents assert that the implementation of the overlay will restrict housing options for new and growing families. In fact, opponents of the overlay are promoting fewer affordable housing options and reducing resident diversity. With a growing supply of McMansions accommodating only those who can afford the $500,000 plus price tags, a range that is far outside the budget of many teachers, nurses, musicians, and especially young starting families, thereby narrowing the demographic profile of this community, risking complete gentrification and the loss of affordable housing options in Sylvan Park. We believe that a conservation overlay expansion will not only preserve the unique and historical character of Sylvan Park, but will also stabilize the value of properties included in the overlay expansion, as other protected communities in Nashville and beyond have demonstrated. A conservation overlay in Sylvan Park, consistent with historic preservation set forth by the West Nashville Community Plan, will preserve the neighborhood's economic integrity, the rich and diverse community of its residents, and the historic fabric that is Sylvan Park. Please support the Sylvan Park Neighborhood Conservation Overlay to ensure that Sylvan Park remains a favorite place to live in Nashville.
Thank you.
council members. I live at 4408 Wyoming Avenue and have lived there for 22 years. My husband and I raised our 3 children in the neighborhood in a lovely old historic home. Built around 1915, it is a small home. By today's standards, only about 1,200 square feet. Can you believe it? We managed to raise 3 children in that amount of space. We are pleading with the council to approve the overlay request. We have sadly watched the demolition of so many of our historic homes in Sylvan Park. Once a historic home is lost, it cannot be replaced. We believe that the conservation overlay is the least restrictive way to stop this wholesale destruction. The time to act is now, while we still have a 62% ratio of historic homes in our neighborhood. The anti-overlay crowd will try to convince you that they are in the majority. They'll quote statistics from a vote done in 2006. I say 2006 is a long time ago, and that number is no longer valid to this argument. In February of 2014, Historic Sylvan Park did a survey of the 700 homes in the neighborhood, a mailed survey, and received 2-to-1 in approval of the overlay. Now that's a recent statistic. It was done by mail. We didn't walk around house to house, unlike the overlay, the anti-overlay people, and twist arms and give out lies and misinformation. In contrast, the door-to-door canvassing taken on recently by the Flamingo crowd has been rife with the telling of outright lies to homeowners about what they can't do with their properties, and lots of arm twisting and coercion. Their petition results are so skewed and inaccurate, it's almost laughable if this wasn't such an important issue. However, the pink flamingos in the yards of the homeowners do speak volumes. We did a windshield survey just yesterday of the overlay boundaries homes and counted properties with flamingos blazing in the yards. This is their symbol. Our survey discovered that of the 700 properties in the proposed area, less than 16% had flamingos in their yards. On a side note, they are giving away flamingos to anyone who'd like to have one. So it's not hard to get a flamingo and put it in your yard. So 16% of 700 homes is certainly not a majority. Please, again, I ask that you vote to approve the expansion to the Park Elkins Conservation Overlay, which Councilman Holloman has brought before you tonight, and save our historic Sylvan Park. Thank you.
Do you have a copy of the February survey to enter into the record?
Councilman Holloman has those records, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Stetton. I live at 4306 Nebraska Avenue and have lived there since 1981. Last night, I went to a meeting of Nashville Next to discuss what we wanted for the future of Nashville. One major problem brought up that is facing the city is the shortage of affordable housing. People with limited incomes are increasingly being priced out of the neighborhood of the housing market. Sylvan Park is an example of what's happened. We have historically been just the kind of neighborhood that most Nashvillians want, with small houses scattered among large ones, creating the kind of diverse community which makes Nashville thrive. This diversity is now threatened with destruction. Developers target small houses, demolishing them and replacing them with large houses. This drives moderate income people out of the neighborhood and depletes the stock of affordable housing. If affordable housing continues to be depleted, the only way to solve it is to build more. This often leads to community conflict and economically segregated neighborhood. How much wiser it would be to preserve the small houses that already exist. This problem is not going to solve itself. It's driven by developers who are merely acting in their own economic self-interest. Without limits, the destruction will continue. The conservation overlay will slow the destruction of small houses. This will not only stabilize the neighborhood, it will stabilize housing in the whole city. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Wendell Goodman, and I live at 4901 Park Avenue.
in an historic home built in 1900. This home is in the Park Elkins Conservation Overlay District, and I am here tonight to tell you councilmen that I am pleased with the Conservation Overlay. It has been a great thing for us, for our neighbors, and I have not heard one complaint from any of my neighbors that this has been a hardship on them. While my home and street are protected, much of Sylvan Park lies at the mercy of developers who are free to destroy our historic character. Beautiful historic homes which have stood the test of time are being torn down, which you have heard. As you know, Sylvan Park is now one of the most desired Nashville areas because of its location and historic value. So it seems ridiculous that all this might be changed because of fear that is developed over a law designed to protect homeowners from unscrupulous developers. Those of us who live in Sylvan Park are proud of the historic value of our homes. We are proud to watch how the pride of ownership is displayed by young families who are moving into our neighborhood to enjoy its friendliness and its proximity to work and shopping. We are looking forward to the redevelopment of the Charlotte Avenue corridor and the infill of quaint restaurants and unique stores. So much interest in this area has been generated, and it has been because of the historic beauty of the area. Please, I ask you to protect Sylvan Park and vote for this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Pat Williams. I live at 4301 Elkins Avenue, which is also within the boundaries of the Park Elkins overlay. I'm very happy to say. And I live at the opposite end of the overlay district from Wendell, and I also want to say that I have heard no complaints from my neighbors. They're all very happy with it. I would like to say a word on behalf of a neighbor who could not be here because of a medical condition which prevents her from putting herself into stressful situations, which unfortunately this has turned out to be. Her name is Connie Putman. She lives at 4810 Dakota Avenue. She was against the overlay in 2005, but she very quickly, after that time, after the overlay was not passed, she was very sorry that she had opposed it because the home next to hers was torn down and replaced with a beautiful home, but it is too large for her block. It blocks the sunlight from her house, which I do not feel is right. I don't think that's fair. I believe that a lot of the people who have been talked into opposing this extension this time will be in Connie's shoes in a few years if this overlay is not passed. I would also like to give you an example of how absolutely irrational some of the folks who are opposing this extension have become. A man went on next door to Sylvan Park just within the last few days and actually likened us to international terrorists. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Chiavala. I live at 4107 Colorado Avenue, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today before this esteemed group of council members. I've been a Sylvan Park homeowner and resident for 26 years. My home was built in 1929, and I have made it my top financial investment. As I walk my dogs each day, as I have done for 26 years, I've noticed the alarming rate at which historic homes have been and are being demolished overnight, such as a pre-Civil War home whose remains were plowed under and covered with dirt overnight, and 2 McMansions went up immediately thereafter. I love my neighbors and my neighborhood, but I've seen the same kind of fearful thinking in the opposition that Homer and the Music Man perpetuated, obscuring the facts and the truth. Folks, we got trouble. We got trouble right here in River City. We got trouble with a capital T that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Although some do not agree, the truth is we have a diamond, a Thomas Hart Benton in Sylvan Park. We have an opportunity to protect the remaining history and character of Sylvan Park as our bordering neighborhoods have done. I'm excited about that. Although they can, no neighborhood in Nashville has ever repealed its historic overlay. I urge you to vote yes to preserve our neighborhood's unique character and community, because if it's gone, you can never get it back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jerry Lynn Hilton, and I'm in favor of the overlay. When this
Could you give your address, please?
I'm sorry, 4203 Nevada Avenue, which is in the proposed area. I was against the overlay when we had the vote several years ago. And I was, one of my main things was property rights. That was kind of my big cry at that point. I soon began to regret my decision as I saw home after home being demolished and replaced by, and I don't want to criticize anyone's home because it's being done to me and I don't like it. But homes that, in my opinion, were oversized, and other persons have spoke before me about economic diversity. And that's kind of my point. I'd like Sylvan Park to remain a place where persons of diverse economic means can live and be in community with one another. If something's not done to stop the current trend of tearing down homes and replacing them with the largest home you can put on the lot, then only certain people are going to be able to afford those homes. The neighborhood will no longer be diverse, and I know that's repeating what some other people have said, but I don't think it can be repeated enough, actually. I have a long history with Sylvan Park. My family moved here in '68. My father was a minister, and we had lived in the parsonage at 4603 Park Avenue, and I went to Sylvan Park, and I went to W.A. Bass, and I graduated from Cone High School. When I was able to afford a house, I wanted to move back to Sylvan Park. Luckily, it was affordable at that time in 1992. I couldn't do that now. Luckily, I'm in Sylvan Park, but someone like me, it's getting increasingly difficult for someone single or someone, whatever my economic class is. I don't know where I fall exactly. It's not, I don't make a lot of money. I couldn't get in Sylvan Park. I'm rambling now, I realize. I just want to say, please vote in favor of this bill. I know the world problems are a lot greater than what we're bringing before you tonight, and in some ways I feel a little guilty about that. But it's my little corner of the world, and I'd like for it to stay. Okay, I lost my train of thought. I'm going to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Kaitis. I live at 4409 Nevada Avenue in a 1906 house, a Victorian. I also own several other properties in the neighborhood. I could probably talk on this subject as everybody in this room could and talk your ears off. So I just tried to decide what is the one topic that I want to approach you with, and that topic is that a lot of the concerns of the people that are opposed to this conservation overlay think that if a house is small, it's not historic. And there are not that many large houses in Sylvan Park. It's not like a lot of the other neighborhoods. My house is about 1,500 square feet, but it's a very historic house. Other houses that I own also are like 900 square feet. Being historic doesn't mean that you have to be large. it just means that you were built with a certain construction that was going on early. So I really hope that you will consider this overlay, because the people that are saying that the houses are too small, that they can't raise a family. I raised my son in a front part of my house as I rented out the back part just so I could afford it. I mean, you know, there are other neighborhoods in this city that you can live in, but these are historic homes. Anyway, please support the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Isaac Friedman. I'm a rising senior at Hume Fogg High School, and I live at 4304 Utah Avenue. It's an old house, probably pre-Victorian. Parts of it might be pre-Cambrian. I don't really know. And that's not a bad thing. It's not bad that my house is old. A lot of people have tried to change the wording, saying our houses are not historic, they're old. Well, does that mean you should tear it down? The pyramids of Giza are really old. Let's tear them down and build a skyscraper. Who needs the Eiffel Tower? Who needs the Parthenon right here in Nashville? Just tear it down and build something new. Make a lot more money with it. But that's not the point of these buildings. The point of these buildings isn't to make money. It's to stand for a certain time period that we don't see anymore. And obviously people do want to tear them down. Renovation is not a challenge. You just need approval. You can build upwards, backwards, and sideways. And there's mostly no issue with that. The houses in Sylvan Park are like works of art. You can expand the margins, you can change the frame, make it look a little better, but you don't change the historic value. You don't paint a mustache on the Mona Lisa. You don't paint an eye patch or a new ear on a portrait of Vincent van Gogh. These houses are art. Those who wish to tear down these houses, rather than restoring them, are no different from those who would destroy a work of art. We are here to save these works of art from ages long past, to save the Picassos of our neighborhood that would otherwise be just completely torn down and replaced with a house whose foundation, not its first floor, but its foundation, if it had eyes, could peer into the gutters of the house next door, that is sitting on a lot that was once home to a very beautiful, very functional home. And because these historic works of art are being torn down as much as they are, rather than renovated or fixed up, I think we need to put a stop to it. We need to stop the destruction of the Rembrandts of our neighborhood. So please, pass this.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, Council, pleased to be here. Glad you are too. My name's Manette Rebecca. I live at 320 54th Avenue North, a couple blocks out of the neighborhood overlay expansion. I strongly support the bill. My home would be contributing if it was in, and I wish I could opt in. Through personal experience, observation, and review of the information, I'm convinced my resale value, the quality of my life, the integrity of my neighborhood benefits more under the overlay, because my building value, not just my land value, will grow. On November 11th, 2005, I closed on my 1940s cottage. The same week, Sylvan Park was deciding on the overlay 9 years ago. Unknown to me, my mortgage banker was very involved with the overlay opposition, and is again. At closing, she made an out-of-place statement. Make sure you vote no on the Sylvan Park overlay. In the dark, I was, by her comment, I got a strong sense she thought it important to protect my property. In retrospect, I realize her statement was fear-driven, not in a new homeowner's best interest, but for hers, a mortgage banker. Bigger houses have bigger mortgages. If the overlay passed in 2005, I feel strongly confident my home, investment, and property rights would have been much better protected. When I purchased my home in Sylvan Park, it was a solid, safe investment with home values consistently rising faster than others. But it did not pass, and teardowns grew and were replaced with huge homes out of neighborhood character and context, causing building values to fall. Short-term investors invaded Sylvan Park, bought with expectation of building permit approval. Last year, Metro Water Council representatives held neighborhood meetings to discuss the bill to curtail stormwater issues occurring in the neighborhoods with infill development. Sylvan Park was one. Stormwater, land disturbance, and removal of old trees were discussed. I ask our council today, where is that stormwater bill? Was it delayed by special interests that would financially benefit in the short term? We need a stormwater bill. We need this overlay. Why are we not acknowledging the limits of our landscape if there is no consequence? I've lived all over the country. I plan to invest in an older established home long ago because of the good feelings I get. I made a deal with my house, an elder house, be a caretaker for what is now my 74-year-old house. Please pass this bill to protect what remains in this cherished, popular, eclectic, and historic neighborhood. It's the right thing to do, it's for the common good, and it's important for Nashville's heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I put this in the record, please?
Sergeant at Arms.
Hello, my name is Claire Bratton. I live at 4802 Nevada Avenue, and I live in a home within the overlay area, but I would probably not be considered a contributing home. It's a small home built in 1948, and it looks real small from the outside, and I keep getting all these love notes in my mailbox from a guy named Frank in Murfreesboro who wants to buy my home for cash. I get a lot of those. And I found out that he actually is sending the same note to my friend's elderly parents who live in Green Hills. So anyway, there seems to be a real sort of avaricious interest in knocking down homes like mine to build giant, tall structures. And I have some dear friends who live right next door to me who actually are opposed to the overlay. Right now, my kitchen window looks right into their kitchen window, but we have a little bush that sort of shields us from, seeing each other's business too much. But, if Frank had his way, they would not have any sunlight, from the west. So I just feel like the proportions of the new homes that are being built it's really not in keeping with the neighborhood. I loved Sylvan Park. The reason I moved here was because it was historic. I used to live in the Hillsborough, Belmont area. I moved away to get a graduate degree, and when I came back, I could not afford my old house. So for those of you who think that historic overlays depress your mortgage, let me tell you, that house is almost 4 times what it was worth when I sold it. So I urge you to support the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Brown. I live at 171 Antioch Pike. The reason I'm here this evening is I'm actually work with the Tennessee Historical Commission, the State Preservation Office, Historic Preservation Office, and I'm the Certified Local Government Coordinator for the state of Tennessee. It's my job to travel around the state and help set up historic districts, historic zoning commissions, and to help cities set those up and to manage them. And so, of course, Nashville is one of the cities that I work in. Of course, I live here. I do have some economic studies. I want to encourage the establishment of the overlay district here in Nashville. I do have a couple of economic studies, one that was done for Tennessee, and of course one that's done for a national study on historic preservation for the United States. This is a culmination of 30 years of work, and this is, of course, a culmination of many decades of work here in Tennessee. When I go around the state and I make presentations, and I make a lot of them to city councils and communities and civic groups, I challenge anyone in the group to present an economic study that shows that historic preservation has a negative effect. I've never seen one, and I've never had anyone ever present one. Anyone done by a bona fide professional economist and a professional study. So I would also issue that challenge again tonight. If you look at all economic studies and all demographics, looking at it from property values, jobs, heritage tourism, environmental impact, quality of life issues, historic preservation improves all those factors in all communities in which it's been established. And this has been well established for many decades across the United States. We see this as a cultural resource and an aspect of stewardship. We believe that these cultural resources have proven economic value, and essentially an overlay is the basic management tool for managing the economic value of these areas and protecting them. I just wanted to encourage you to establish the historic overlay, and I wanted to support the Metro Historic Zoning Commission in recommending this historic overlay. Thank you.
Do you wish to enter those documents for the record?
Please.
Thank you. Just give them to the Sergeant at Arms.
My name is Carol Norton. I live at 801 Boscobel Street in Council District 6, so obviously I don't live in Sylvan Park. I live in historic Edgefield, but I'm here requesting your vote for the Sylvan Park overlay. The first time I spoke to you at council was 1978, 2 years after having moved to the city to work in East Nashville and then subsequently moving to Edgefield. At that time, long ago, I asked for your vote to make Edgefield the city's first historic zoning district. You did. Our success in Edgefield led to the Lockland East End Conservation District a few years later, and the movement continued through East Nashville. Maxwell Heights, Greenwood, Eastwood, all in East Nashville. East Nashville has the largest concentration of conservation and historic districts in the city, and there's a reason. Protective historic overlays work. You've just heard from the previous speaker how that translates into money. So much so that Edgefield long ago expanded its boundaries. East End did the same, so has Eastwood and Lockland Springs both this year. The fear-mongering and opposition you've heard and will hear is groundless. East Nashville is the success story in this city that disproves that. We're the poster child for a successful neighborhood because of historic zoning tools. We're a vibrant, diverse, neighbor and family-friendly community that everyone points to as the IT neighborhood in the IT city. Drive through East Nashville's districts, but drive slow. Our baby boom continues, so watch out for those strollers. Count the walkers, the joggers, the runners. They'll outrun your car, by the way. The dog walkers, the cyclists. There are charges that Charlotte Avenue would have to be shuttered. That's just patently untrue. Have you been to 5 Points? In addition to conservation historic zoning, 5 Points has the UDO coming into play. It's also a redevelopment district with MDHA review. So count them, 3 layers of review and oversight, and yet our businesses are flourishing. They're willfully playing by the rules, all of them, and they're successful, from historic homes and commercial storefronts to quirky repurposed Quonset hut, VW van and concrete block buildings. In addition to brand new construction, 5 Points keeps on growing. How many of our businesses have you read about or seen on TV? More than you can count, from Southern Living and Old House Journal to the Washington Post and New York Times and every cable food channel. Come to weekend brunch at Marche any and every weekend, and you'll see a queue that rivals that pancake place in Hillsborough during CMA week.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, or rather good evening, council members. My name is Brett Withers. I live at 1113 Granada Avenue. I'm also in East Nashville in Council District 6. My neighborhood worked with Councilman Westerholm this year, and we more than doubled the size of our conservation zoning overlay with widespread support, very, very minimal opposition in our neighborhood. I know that different neighborhoods are different. We did have some blocks of our neighborhood that did not feel they would benefit from the conservation zoning overlay, and we were able to work with our council member to adjust the boundaries to leave those blocks out. That's sometimes difficult to do because the districts have to be contiguous, but that is a possibility. And really that's what I want to talk to this council about today is that I just want to emphasize what it is that you would be approving if you voted yes today. The Metro Historic Zoning Commission did recognize that these structures in this district do meet the criterion for historic zoning. The Planning Department staff recognized that the Conservation Zoning Overlay expansion for Sylvan Park met the goals of the West Nashville Community Plan. That actually was not the issue. I think what my perspective on it is that I think what gives some folks comfort, including many of yourselves potentially, is how closely the count is. The planning commissioners worked with Councilman Holloman, and they recommended disapproval, but they recommended he come back at a later time and possibly look at boundaries or look at other tools. Yes, there are other tools out there, but the only tool that prevents the demolition of historic structures is the Conservation Zoning Overlay, although I'm certain that Councilman Holloman is willing to speak with his constituents. So really what I want to encourage you to think of today is today you are not implementing this overlay on anyone. What you're doing today is you're voting to extend Councilman Holloman the courtesy that he can continue that conversation with his constituents and the planning department to continue having a pretty rational discussion once survey information is settled a little bit and once cooler heads prevail. So again, I urge your support today just to allow that conversation to continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and thank you. My name is David Dern. I live at 5011 Idaho in the overlay district. I bought my house in 1994. It was built in the 1930s. I restored, renovated, and modernized it in 2005 with the help of the Planning Commission, or the Historic Overlay Commission. They were a great resource and helped me very much. The Planning Commission, I've watched the Planning Commission video twice, and I still don't understand exactly why they moved to disapprove this. They approved a larger area in 2005. Councilman Holloman has had a number of meetings. My friends and my neighbors in the pink t-shirts will say that we didn't. It's not so. I urge your support for this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Hayden. I live at 5000 Wyoming Avenue. I'm the president of Historic Sylvan Park. I don't know what a push poll is. That is what the opposition will claim our mailing in February was. But I do know what pushy is, and that's the opposition. They've been circulating their opposition petition at local bars and restaurants, asking people to sign on. They've been going door to door, trying to scare people with misinformation, telling them what they can't do to their house. Most of the people that are opposed to this overlay either already live in McMansions or live in an area that's not even included in the boundary of the proposed overlay. These people have called Robin Ziegler at the Planning Commission asking them, well, what can I not do to my house? And she's like, well, you're not in the boundaries. You can do anything you want to do to your house. They claim that this process has been rushed. Personally, I've been waiting 7 years for an overlay. We've been having discussions with Councilman Holloman since 2011. We were instrumental in getting the Park Elkins overlay passed, and this process for the current expansion has been going on in some form since December of 2013. That's 6 months ago. That's hardly rushed. They'll claim there haven't been public meetings. There have been several public meetings. Robin Ziegler from the Historic Zoning Department has come and put on presentations at least twice that I know of, and in the past has done it several times for groups to come in the neighborhood and be educated by this. The fear-mongering that is going on with this is just appalling. And I must say, I've been very impressed with the eloquence of my neighbors, and especially of these two younger people that have spoken so eloquently tonight. I ask that you please pass the Sylvan Park overlay.
Thank you.
I'm Elaine Hackerman, 4701 Utah Avenue. The old part of my house is 90 years old. I've checked with the Historic zoning and used their advice when I added on 1,200 square feet. All the little old ladies are going smaller. I went bigger. I just won't conform. At the previous hearing, we had tears from a lady in a 1,000 square foot house that they cannot have children because their house is so small and the overlay would not allow them to build on. My house started at 900 square feet. The couple that bought it in 1923, first couple living there, they had 3 children who lived there until they were adults and left for school and marriage. And so there were 5 people, 3 bedrooms, a 6 by 8 foot bathroom, and a living room, dining room, and kitchen in this 900 square foot house. So even though people nowadays want bigger spaces, it is possible to rear children. I've saved my money for my add-on to my house, and people are telling me I don't have the money to move. I don't have the money to add on, and they don't realize that they can save it, and it would be nice if they were thrifty, but cheap works too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janelle Glasgow Hall. I live at 900 Wilson Pike in Brentwood, Tennessee, the land of McMansions. I am a realtor with Pilgerton. I've been a realtor since 1997. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I was born and reared in East Nashville. I've had a varied career in my life. I've been a publicist, a marketing pro, and now real estate. As I said, I was hired in '82 by Quinnell, who owned 2 buildings on 2nd Avenue, and at that time 2nd Avenue was not doing very well. They hired me to promote the revitalization of 2nd Avenue. I also worked for Historic Nashville as a volunteer, raising money to protect 2nd Avenue. I initiated the very first Summer Lights Festival downtown in 1982. I love this town. I love Nashville. I may live in Brentwood, my heart and soul is in East Nashville, I guess. If you look at 2nd Avenue, you know, it's a phenomenal success. If you look at East Nashville, we renovated an old house there in 1985. We sold it in '93 for $250,000. I just looked at comps over there. One sold not long ago for $800,000. So conservation overlays, make sense financially. On Whitland Avenue, which also has a conservation overlay, I pulled comps. Before the overlay, they sold for $722,000. Afterwards, $890,000. People yearn for authenticity, for truth, simplicity, for a sense of neighborhood. I think I can state emphatically that conservation overlays work. I did a study, or pulled comps. I think you have copies of this on your desk. Before Sylvian Park had the overlay, the comps were $308,000, $894,000. Afterwards was $332,698. Property values increased despite the Great Recession, despite bankruptcies, despite a smaller pool of qualified buyers, despite tighter lending standards. Preservation works. It's just a very plain and simple truth. Overlays work, and I really think you ought to consider all of that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
My name is Janine Brush. I live at 4907 Wyoming Avenue in Sylvan Park. I have since 2003 in one of the smaller homes. Probably will be considered a contributing home. I just wanted to make 2 points. One is that we're not against new homes being built. because there are some homes that are non-contributing that eventually will be torn down. We're just asking that when the new one is built, that it would be in proportion with the rest of the neighborhood, so that as I am today, looking across the street at two giant tall houses. The other thing is that the houses that are small can be added on to under the proposed overlay. There might be a small restriction on that, but it can definitely be done, and if we were to do it, I'd be more than willing to do that. I think that it's a historic area. It has diversity. All families nowadays, if you read it all, don't always consist of a husband, a wife, 2.5 children, and a dog. Some of us are single or small families, and that's becoming more prevalent. And the small houses in Sylvan Park can provide that and still be a really good investment under the proposed overlay. So I really request that you give thought to this and proceed, and don't let Sylvan Park die. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Peter Brush. I live at 4907 Wyoming Avenue, which is in the area of the proposed overlay. This overlay proposal has been discussed extensively on our local computer community bulletin board. Overwhelmingly, people in opposition to the overlay seem to be concerned with notions of their personal self-interest. They're worried about ideas of their individual property rights being impinged upon, or the concern that somehow the overlay might negatively impact their financial position. People in support of the overlay are concerned with the neighborhood. And I hope you will agree with us that maybe this neighborhood consideration should be paramount. We can't do whatever we want with our property. That's why we have zoning and building codes. I urge you to defer to Councilman Holloman. I think he knows the needs of Sylvan Park better than anyone, because he's worked so long and hard on this topic. And lastly, just a reminder that Nashville has so many conservation overlay neighborhoods, and there's a huge amount of evidence that they work. They work well. They preserve or increase property values. As has been mentioned, they don't get revoked once passed. People seem to like them. It helps neighborhoods survive. So I hope you'll help us let Sylvan Park become a conservation overlay neighborhood so we can preserve its historic character. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Valerie Harrell. I live at 5411 California Avenue, which is in the Nations, not Sylvan Park. So at first glance, I wouldn't appear to have a dog in this fight. But I'm a born and raised West Nashvilleian. The neighborhood that I grew up in is on the other side of what is now the Greenway and Richland Creek from Sylvan Park. I had plenty of friends in Sylvan Park, but I knew as a kid that when I could afford to live somewhere, that was going to be it. So when I could finally afford a place that wasn't the bare bones, cheesy apartment that you get right out of college, I moved to Sylvan Park, to a beautiful 1935 duplex diagonally behind the produce place, and for me it was paradise. But slowly but surely the neighborhood grew and the neighborhood got better, and to be honest, new people bought the place that I lived and I couldn't afford to live there anymore. But because it had been so deeply impressed upon me by the beautiful homes in Sylvan Park, the quality and the history, I looked for a house in West Nashville. I looked for a house predating 1940, and I found a house built in 1925 in the Nations that I could afford. The Nations is pretty young as far as being organized goes, but we have an eye to the future. We are working really hard to make sure that we maintain the integrity in the community that we want, and I feel like the conservation overlay in Sylvan Park is in complement to that, and that it can only help my community to preserve this community. And I feel like Nashville has a long and sad history of tearing things down or letting things sit until they rot so they can tear it down, that we don't treasure what we've had and where we've been. And I'm not saying that progress and change aren't wonderful things, but I don't want to lose what it is that made us what we are. And I feel like Sylvan Park, which was one of the, if not the first, one of the first planned suburbs of Nashville, I feel like that's something that's absolutely worth treasuring and preserving. And if these homes are still standing, we should do what we can to ensure that they stand for as long as they physically can, and that they're treasured and appreciated, and that what they meant to generations before is impressed on the generations that come after. So thank you, and I hope that you will pass this overlay for the Sylvan Park neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Visconti. I live in a Victorian cottage on 4700 Dakota Avenue. It was built, I think, around 1900, and the first tenant in my house was a plumber, and I think his name was William Faulkner, believe it or not, which I find really interesting, and I love knowing that, and I love knowing and feeling that history. I think this debate comes down to two words: neighborhood or development. I moved into a neighborhood, and I love it. Nashville is a city of neighborhoods with distinct character. If we do not stand up now against those less attractive parts of human nature, greed and selfishness, we will lose what makes our city so wonderful. Certainly, we could all tear down our homes, we could build them up, sell them, and make some good money. But money is not the measure of a man, and the size of your house is not the size of your heart. I contend that it is our ability to share, to support, to work together that makes us human. I would gladly forego the ability to get a little more money if it meant I could be a contributing, sensitive, aware member of a community that stands together to make the whole community better, to lift every family up as one. Please help us. Support this overlay. Please do not leave us vulnerable to developers and the few self-centered homeowners who believe that their personal desires trump those of the greater community. And we are all part of the greater community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members. I'm John Summers. I live at 5000 Wyoming Avenue, and I've had the privilege of serving in this council from both East Nashville and West Nashville. I think the only council member that's done that, been crazy enough to do that. All the evidence, you have 30 years of evidence before you saying that overlays help Nashville grow. All the evidence. The real estate market shows it. The development shows it. We've got thriving neighborhoods in our conservation overlay districts. The evidence that Robin Ziegler can give you, you've got it in one of the flyers here. It's just in the last 12 months, they've approved something like 187 additions. They've also included demolitions, new construction and all, but our conservation overlays are growing, they're vibrant. So why do you have all these pink shirts out here? You've got two neighborhoods coming up in front of you tonight with no opposition. It's political. It was political in 2005, and it's political now. Councilman Holloman, he can't say this, but his opponents sitting out of the audience, and some of the people that worked hardest against him are sitting out there as well. That's what this is all about. It's politics. It's politics. Now, Franklin Roosevelt said, all we have to fear is fear itself. There are some good people in these pink shirts, and they've been given a fear story that you can't add on to your house, which all the evidence says differently. There's probably not a house in Sylvan Park that can't be added on to 50, 100, maybe even 200%. You've got all the evidence to tell you that. They've been told that their property values are going down. You have evidence contrary to that. So there's some people living in fear out here. And you have some interesting small group dynamics where people don't want to, they get in together, they kind of insulate themselves, and they won't look beyond that fear. That's what you have. But you have some pink shirts out here that are hidden developers, hidden real estate folks, speculators. They're just here to make a dollar. And they couldn't care less if you bulldoze down the Parthenon and put up, a parking lot, if it means $1 more to them. I hate to say that, but that's the way some of these folks are. You have surveys here we've given you from the people that live in Park Elkins. 70% are satisfied with the overlay district, 15% are unsatisfied, 13% are undecided. Interestingly enough, we got 16% flamingos out there. These numbers are pretty consistent. And this is a similar survey to what we did early in the year. Who knows your district best? You do. You got 6 or 7 council members here that live in conservation overlay districts. Ask them what it's like living in a district. But who knows your district best? You do. Councilman Holloman knows this district best. He's been abused. He's been lied about. You know, we had a neighborhood meeting, and one of the guys getting ready to show up with a sign back here just cursed at him. The whole meeting interrupted, couldn't hardly let anybody ask any questions.
Thank you.
That's what we're dealing with here tonight.
Seeing no one else wishing to speak in support, those in opposition, please line up at the lectern. And we do not allow signs at the lectern. We do not allow signs at the lectern.
These aren't signs.
Okay. Okay. Just so you know. Please state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Alan Grant. I live at 4508 Wyoming Avenue within the proposed overlay district. I would first like to address a couple of points that were made a moment ago. You've heard a lot about developers and profit and things like that. This is about individual property rights. What this is about is a small group of neighbors are trying to impose their opinion of what looks good and what they think is historic over that of the property rights of everyone else. You're hearing a lot about McMansions. This is not about McMansions. My home is 1,400 square feet. We have a mother-in-law suite that used to be an attic upstairs. I don't have a McMansion. I don't want a McMansion. You're not going to hear people who want McMansions speaking for us tonight. You're hearing about misinformation. I think if there's misinformation coming, it's coming from the proponents, and you'll hear about that tonight. Respectfully to Mr. Summers, a moment ago he said, you've got two neighborhoods coming up here with no opposition, and he said that clearly the district councilman should know and councilwoman should know what his neighborhood wants, and generally I would say that that is true. But because of these t-shirts, I would ask you to take a look and question that, whether that's truly the case with Sylvan Park. And I would submit to you that it's not the case. I urge you to vote down the overlay expansion in Sylvan Park, not to defer to third reading. Any deferral will be fruitless. We have requested Council Holloman to slow this process down to have neighborhood discussion. That request has been resoundingly denied routinely and several times over. You'll hear a number of messages tonight from a diverse group of neighbors of Sylvan Park. We are up against a stacked deck. A very small but organized group, a corporation, a nonprofit corporation that has been lobbying for the overlay since that corporation's inception, and we are unfortunately even up against our own councilman who refuses to acknowledge the will of the majority. We're not an organization, but rather we're the majority of the neighborhood, and you're going to hear evidence of that tonight. We're an assembly of concerned, caring neighbors who agree on certain principles. We believe that the will of the majority should direct this conversation. We hold dearly our property rights, yes, but more importantly, we respect the property rights of our neighbors, and we believe that their rights should outweigh the opinion of what looks nice to everyone else, particularly a small group. You'll hear a number of messages tonight. You'll hear about how the overlay will depress property values, and you'll hear statistics. You'll hear about how it will force growing families out of the neighborhood, restricts the property rights of neighbors. You also hear about the minimal process that's been undergone in this situation. You'll hear about the push-pull of the proponents. I'd ask you again not to defer this bill as it's inappropriate and an unfair course of action to have been brought this bill to Metro Council and then to leverage the pendency of the bill to attempt to force compromise within the overlay bill itself when the clear majority of the neighborhood does not want it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is John Rogers. My wife and I own our home at 4200 Nebraska Avenue, which is within the proposed overlay expansion area. I rise to speak in opposition to this overlay and urge you to vote against it. As many of you probably recall, this is not the first time a proposed conservation overlay has been in front of this body for Sylvan Park. Another conservation overlay was proposed for Sylvan Park in 2005 and 2006. Because of widespread opposition to the proposed overlay, in 2006, Metro conducted a survey of property owners within Sylvan Park. Of the 891 responses received from the Sylvan Park homeowners, 66% were in opposition to this overlay. Therefore, in 2006, the majority of Sylvan Park property owners were against this invasion on private property rights. Opposition to this overlay remains strong today, as you see by the line behind me. As you will hear in just a few minutes, this small group of concerned neighbors has conducted a petition, not based on lies and misinformation, but by going around and talking to our neighbors. This petition, as you will hear in a few minutes, shows that a substantial majority of homeowners within the affected area oppose this conservation overlay. In contrast to the opposition's strong showing of majority opposition, the proponents of this overlay have no credible evidence that the majority of Sylvan Park homeowners in the affected area support it. There was a survey mentioned. This was nothing more than a partisan push poll. A mailer was sent to homeowners in the affected area. It had 2 sheets within it. One was the survey, the other one was why you should vote for an overlay. It had a picture in it of 2 would have been referred to as skinny houses. They're not even in this affected area. It had no information regarding why you may want to be against the overlay. This issue has 2 sides. The push poll only provided one side of the argument. That's why it's a push poll. It's not credible evidence. Furthermore, the survey provided no notice that it was going to be what Councilman Holloman was going to base his proposal on. It didn't say anything about that. Moreover, the survey results haven't even been publicly released. The proponents couldn't even give the numbers here tonight. So the survey results cannot be credibly relied upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, Madam Vice Mayor, I'm Travis Hanley. I live at 4908 Idaho Avenue. The central issue in this whole debate is the lack of majority consensus. That was the primary reason that the Planning Commission voted not to recommend this. We're here to prove as best we can. We're not professional pollsters, and we've only had a very short amount of time to react to this. There's been discussion, I guess, for a long time, but we only learned of the councilman's decision to file for first reading when the agenda was published. When we realized we weren't going to get another vote, we decided a petition was the best democratic tool to use, and we started going door to door, asking people if they want to sign a petition that asked the council members to vote no on Bill 807. Our results to date: we've been able to contact 41% of affected homeowners who wish to weigh in on the issue. Of those homeowners, 26 either said they were in favor of an overlay or were counted as proponents based on their support at the Planning Commission hearing. 249 homeowners in the proposed expansion area signed our petition. So with the participation rate nearly equal to the 47% participation rate of the 2006 survey, we have 90% of surveyed homeowners against an overlay. There's no reason to believe this metric won't hold up for the remaining homes, because most of those are, that's where most of the non-resident homeowners are. We haven't been able to reach them yet. And Councilman Summers said in 2006, the council survey was heavily dominated by absentee landlords. Remove absentee landlords and a majority of the neighborhood wanted the overlay. Well, we've removed the absentee landlords and they clearly do not want conservation zoning of any sort. 82 concerned citizens who do not own affected properties also signed for a total of 331 signatures so far. That's 9 out of 10 residents opposed. The results clearly show that there's no consensus for conservation zoning in Sylvan Park. Deferral to bill consensus will be fruitless unless the bill is changed in such a way as to not include conservation zoning. I have a copy of the petition to enter into the
Sergeant at Arms, will you please get the petition for the record?
I would also like to address the attacks on our volunteers going door to door. They were liars and misinformation and all this. I designed this process kind of myself of how we were going to conduct this, specifically because the door-to-door effort in 2005, somebody came to my door and preached to me for 30 minutes about how I needed an overlay, and when I said I wanted to vote no, they took another 10 minutes to try and get me to change my mind, and that really left a bad taste in my mouth. So I informed all of our volunteers to simply knock on the door, ask if they want to sign. If they don't want to sign, move on to the next house. We don't have time to try and convert people, and it's really not our place to convert people. We're just trying to collect signatures. We're going to keep doing that, and we're going to have more signatures at third reading. I would like to point out that that this petition should be, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Vice Mayor, Council. My name is Bobby Francesca, and I live at 4807 Nebraska Avenue. And there are 3 reasons why I'm against this overlay. 1, the dishonesty and the process. 2, the confusion and speed about which this overlay has come about. And 3, the hypocrisy of the leadership of this group. And I would like to submit to record, on the Historic Commission website, there is a link to the Secretary of Interior's guidelines that they follow. There's 22 overlays in Nashville. On the front page of every one of them, we follow the Secretary of Interior guidelines. The Historic Administration has not followed their guidelines, and they are jeopardizing federal dollars. They're jeopardizing tax dollars. This is the 3rd point, 5th paragraph. Secretary of Interior, first page. Preservation planning includes public participation in the planning process, and it should provide a forum for open discussion of preservation issues. Public involvement is most meaningful when it is used to assist in defining values of properties and preservation planning issues, rather than when it is limited to review of decisions already made. Early and continuing public participation is essential to the broad acceptance of the preservation planning decisions. If the administrators in Metro had adhered to the guidelines, we could have worked this out and nobody would be here right now. It was not open, and if a councilman has any minutes from any meeting, I think he should submit those for this open process. That should go on there. The speed in which this and confusion that we brought this about.
I thought you were going to read from that. You don't need to hold it up for an exhibit.
Okay. I want to submit it for the record, though.
Okay.
I'll share with you what happened. April 3rd, there was a meeting, and just like this said, they just said, this is what you're going to get, and we'll answer questions. Metro Council passed this on first reading before it was approved by the Metro Historic Zoning Commission. That was June 1st. When Councilman Hallman came to that meeting on April, he said all the homes would be in it. It appeared first reading at council, and there were 760 homes in it. We were going, what happened to the 800? We never knew. 2 months went by and there was no open meeting, and they changed the parameters. When we went before the Metro Historic Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Sergeant at Arms, will you get the papers for the record?
My name is Mike Sprague, and I own property at 4802 Wyoming Avenue. I'm here to outline the circumstances surrounding one of the 2 informational meetings our friends have referenced earlier. We have been told, and I have 2 documents here.
She'll be right back to get those.
2 documents that I'd like to go into the official record. Of the 2 meetings that have been referenced earlier, one of the meetings occurred during the month of October at the Sylvan Park Neighborhood Association meeting. Most residents of Sylvan Park are not members of the SPNA, and even fewer attend the meetings. I have submitted into the official record the SPNA October meeting agenda. There are many items on this agenda with a focus on the 46th and Murphy parking plan at McCabe Golf Course. I've also submitted the minutes for the SPNA October meeting. This meeting was called to order at 7:08 p.m. and was adjourned at 8 p.m. There were 15 items discussed at this meeting, beginning with the September meeting minute corrections and concluding with an announcement for an affordable health care insurance event to take place at St. Luke's House at 1605 56th Avenue North on Thursday, October 17th from 4:30 to 7:30, and later a free flu shots would be available at the event. Robin Ziegler from the Metro Historic Commission was SPNA's monthly guest speaker. So on that agenda, there were 15 items to discuss. The meeting was 52 minutes long. That averages 3 minutes and 47 or 46 seconds per item to discuss an issue clearly as important as this one. This is one of the 2 meetings our friends have cited. I hope you can understand why we have a problem with this October meeting being listed as one of their 2 neighborhood informational meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dan Shomo. I live at 4804 Idaho Avenue, right in the heart of this proposed overlay. My house is 1,000 square feet. It sits 25 feet further from the curb than any others. Per the regulations of this overlay, I can't build up, I can't build forward, I could build back, which is right into the alley. So I'm up here really to talk about the second meeting that the pro-overlay people are speaking about. This took place on April 3rd, and I did hear about it through a card in the mail I guess I got from Councilman Holloman. I showed up at this meeting. There were about 35 people there. Most of those were members of this corporation, the Historic Sylvan Park Association. There were a few of us that were opposed. I didn't realize, I mean, there's 1,500 neighbors, but there were 35 to 40 people, and during this meeting, it wasn't that there was going to be an overlay expansion. It was a presentation from Robin Ziegler about the benefits of an historic overlay with, a few questions and answers after the fact. That's approximately 35 people determining the outcome of 1,500 neighbors. It ended up, at that point in time, there was not a proposed overlay area. At the June meeting that we asked for, the overlay area changed at that point in time to only include 700 homes. I myself have walked, once I started hearing about that this was going to be a done deal, I started walking door to door, asking neighbors how they felt. 90% of the people, it was a great opportunity. Got to meet all my neighbors. 90% of my neighbors were against this. They all signed this petition to stop it. They were all asking, why is he putting this through without the neighborhood being involved in this? There is a small group of 20 to 30 people. Tonight, of the proponents that spoke for it, half of those people are outside this area. The majority of this neighborhood, the vast majority of this neighborhood is opposed to this. Thank you for your time. I ask that you vote no to this right now.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Cornsweat, and my wife and I own property at 4804 Wyoming. It seems that a portion of the neighborhood discontent seems to be around duplex zoning. Some people don't like the skinny houses on one lot. Aren't there other zoning procedures to deal with this? Wouldn't Bill 770, already moving through this chamber, address this issue? I don't think we have to amend the personal property rights of 700 homeowners to address duplexes. Bill 770 should work just fine. And I believe that Bill 770 would restrict the duplex height to 1.5 times the width. So appreciate it, and hope that you vote against this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Vice Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Ann McGarren, and I live at 4910 Elkins Avenue, and we also own a home at 5111 Idaho. I'm an architect that studied urban planning at Auburn University. We moved into our 1899 home in 1995. My husband and I are handy, and we renovated our house and have had the joy of being in the process of raising our 2 boys within this neighborhood. Part of a wonderful scooter gang within this Sylvan Park neighborhood. I remember when there was only one homeowners association in Sylvan Park. We have friends on both sides of this issue. Sylvan Park is an eclectic neighborhood with houses from every decade in the last 120 years. Some good, some not so good. And I hope that there will be houses from every decade in the next 100 years. Because to say that we don't want that is to say that there is nothing good to be built in the future of our community. And that the architects of today are not as good as the architects of yesterday. To create a conservation overlay in this eclectic neighborhood is to say that that we don't value that diversity. Much to my regret, I didn't fight the overlay when Park and Elkins was created in the hope that that would appease the people of my neighborhood who felt strongly about these conservation overlays. I live in that overlay. Subsequently to that overlay, the house beside me and the house behind me have had some significant work done to them with mixed reviews. And if people who want to keep it historic think that we're going to keep the price of the homes down in any neighborhood that's within 3 miles of downtown Nashville, that's just a mistake. They're going to continue to expand, and within those houses, they're in the way over the $500,000 range when they're going to be sold. Height, density, and size limits are possible through several zoning options. And historic overlays were created to serve a higher purpose. I would request that you vote no to this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Bradley. I live at 4707 Idaho Avenue. I'm a realtor with the Wilson Group located in Sylvan Park. I also serve on the board of directors for the Greater Nashville Association of Realtors. However, tonight I'm here as a concerned homeowner and an advocate for property rights. In my personal and professional opinion, the overlay will be bad for property values, bad for the local economy within the Charlotte corridor, and bad for Nashville in general. Sylvan Park is different in many ways to the typical neighborhood within conservation zoning. Sylvan Park is made up of homes from many different eras, not just 2 or 3 decades. They're much smaller than the typical contributing homes in other overlays, so it's going to be very hard to do an addition and not take a financial loss. Since Sylvan Park is very different from other neighborhoods within conservation zoning, it's hard to project the massive impact that an overlay might have on the neighborhood. I decided to look at the effects of the Sylvan Park overlay on the properties located within the bounds of the overlay and compare them to the homes located in the proposed overlay that have not been subject to the same guidelines. The results were astounding. Keep in mind, this is the same exact neighborhood. It's just comparing properties that are in an overlay to properties who are not in an overlay. I pulled every closed sale within the 2 areas, starting the year before the overlay was enacted through the end of 2013. In 2013, the average price per square foot was $171 in what would soon be the Park Elkins overlay, and $168 in our area. This is very close, so it shows that the areas were very comparable. To put that, the following year, the Park Elkins took a significant hit and went down to $156 per square foot, while the average in Sylvan Park went up and continues to do so. The price per square foot still has not come to its original price of 2010 in the Park Elkins overlay. However, it's reached almost $200 a square foot in the rest of the neighborhood. To put that in perspective, since the overlay, the area bound by the guidelines is now worth an average of 20% less per square foot than the area that is now being threatened by the same guidelines. We were opposed to this in 2006. We're opposed today. We are the majority, and we want to have a voice in the future of our neighborhood. A person's home is typically their largest investment. What makes a person's right to control what happens to the houses around them more important than another person's right to their own property? We're against conservation zoning. There are tools that can help shape our neighborhood going forward, but conservation zoning is not one of them. Please vote against this bill.
Thank you.
And I do have something to submit into the record.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Rosenblatt, and I live at 4809 Nebraska Avenue, which is within the proposed overlay. Unlike many people that you will hear from tonight, I live in a newly constructed 3,000 square foot modern home that my husband and I built in 2013. The home that was torn down to build our home was built in 1944. It was small. It was old. It was in terrible, dilapidated condition. And the city assessed our property taxes at 3 times the amount of the house that we replaced before our construction was even completed. My husband and I are both attorneys in Nashville, and we're both Nashville natives. And when deciding where in Nashville to buy our first home, Sylvan Park was an easy choice. The #1 reason was because of the options for relatively reasonably priced new construction. We also liked its location, close to the downtown core, the growing and improving shops, businesses, and improving Charlotte Avenue corridor, and the community aspects like the park and greenway. We feel lucky to have had the freedom to design and build our dream home when we did, because under these proposed overlay guidelines, we don't feel that building our home would be possible. I think that this overlay is going to stifle new construction, and when purchasing our home, we only considered new construction. I think that this overlay is going to halt much of the positive progress and improvements that have been made to Sylvan Park in recent years, and it has caused the exciting boom happening to the residential and commercial parts of this neighborhood and nearby. I personally disagree with the overlay because I don't think it's appropriate to legislate aesthetic preferences. I think many of these homes we are talking about aren't historic. They are old, and I think that what replaces them is better, and so do all of the people buying them. As an attorney, it makes me angry that something as important as people's property rights could be taken away from them and replaced with government oversight and involvement. I also don't know why 1945 was the arbitrary date that someone decided it was appropriate to freeze time. I think that this overlay is incredibly short-sighted, and I think it's bad for Sylvan Park and bad for Nashville. I don't want this overlay. My neighbors don't want this overlay. Realtors in the neighborhood don't want this overlay. Businesses don't want this overlay. Only a few people do, and they are in the minority. I will not stand in their way to buy an old house and live in it unchanged until it rots. But please don't force other people to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zach Todd. I live at 4208 Dakota Avenue. I'm here to represent the majority on this issue in discussing the empirical evidence to this fact. As of today, there are 330 signatures on a petition to kill this bill. More will follow. We have done our due diligence in 4 short weeks to show the neighborhood truly wants and needs, which is not this overlay. These numbers are not in dispute and are easily verifiable. These 330 people represent not only those who are opposed to the overlay, but those who have not been represented by their councilman. I would ask, what more would we need to do to prove this to you? Who will represent us, the majority? Who will let our voices be heard and recognized and considered? Who will display the courage to vote with we, the people, and respect the majority? This argument is not over front dormers or tearing down historic homes, as some would portray it. It's about a small group of like-minded minority who wish to mandate and impose their view on the majority. Conservation zoning in Sylvan Park will not work. Something else might, but we need the opportunity to discuss and decide for ourselves. I would welcome bipartisan discussion, one thing that has not been available to date. Case in point on the majority, of the 16 folks who you heard who are proponents to this bill, of the 27 folks that you heard who are proponents of this bill, only 16 live in the affected area. Please stop this bill tonight. Put an end to it for good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council members. My name is Lauren Rogers, and I live at 4200 Nebraska Avenue, which would be in the proposed overlay expansion area. My husband John and I have lived in Sylvan Park since moving back to Nashville in 2011. I respectfully request that you vote no or abstain from voting on the proposed expansion of the Park Elkins Conservation Overlay to the other areas of Sylvan Park. As you've heard, the proposed expansion area goes against property rights, and it also goes against families, especially young families wanting to stay in Sylvan Park. I would like to share my personal story with you so you can see the real-world impact of this legislation. As I said, my husband John and I bought our home in Sylvan Park almost 2 years ago. We rented in Sylvan Park for a year before that. We decided to stay in Sylvan Park for many reasons. The proximity to our work, we both work in Midtown. The nearby greenway, we have 2 dogs and we consider ourselves avid runners. And the ability to walk to restaurants, all great things. The 2 of us bought our small home with the thought that we would expand onto it once we decided it was time to expand our family. A little bit about our home. It was built in 1938 and would be considered a contributing home. Our 5-room home, which has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, a small living room, and a small eat-in kitchen, is just a little over 1,000 square feet. It sits significantly further back on the lot than the other homes surrounding it. And we always thought we would have the option of expanding the house where we wanted to accommodate the needs of what we would like our family to be. However, after personally meeting with Miss Robin Ziegler at our home, which was about a 5-minute meeting, we realized that our dream would not be realized if the proposed overlay happens. In our 5-minute meeting with Ms. Ziegler, we were told that we would only be allowed to add onto the back and maybe a small dormer onto the roof. Given the location of our house, like I said, being further back on the lot compared to most, this would leave us with little or no backyard. The proposed guidelines would make it almost impossible to add a reasonable addition to the house. Some would argue that we should just move if we want the additional square feet. In fact, some of the pro-overlay group have suggested that we move to a different neighborhood. Where is the sense of community in that, I ask you? It saddens me when those for the overlay say that those against the overlay are greedy. This is a deeply personal issue that is anti-family. I think it is greedy of the proponents of this issue when they want to take away my family's rights to meaningfully expand onto our home. John and I chose this home for many reasons. Please place your trust in us that we can decide what is best for our individual property. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Devin Frost. I live at 4802 Idaho Avenue in the proposed overlay. I've been there almost 5 years. I've even met the family that built the home and lived there and grew up there. I've met the children and the grandchildren. And my grandmother grew up on Utah. When I first got the push poll from Historic Sylvan Park, I did vote yes. I thought, I don't really know what this is all about and I want to fit into this neighborhood, and I put yes. And as you can see, I'm in pink and I'm very much against it. It's not a political reason, not at all. It's a very personal reason. And I work very hard for what I have, and I love my beautiful home. And I feel that I should do what is best for me and my future family to that home. So please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Grant, and I live at 4508 Wyoming Avenue. That's a 1930s home that is within the proposed overlay expansion area. One main issue that I wanted to address tonight is the abundance of old homes in Sylvan Park that are now going to be considered historic that are too small to renovate without taking a financial loss. Unlike other historic overlays that contain larger, quality homes that were built to stand the test of time and can be renovated to accommodate today's families' needs, many of the homes in Sylvan Park in the new proposed overlay area are between 500 and 1,000 square feet. You've heard a lot about why those are some restrictions for people that have growing families. But basically, I wanted to talk about how, according to Metro Historic, they would now be considered contributing structures. Because of this small size, an addition of more than a couple hundred square feet would not be allowed, and even that would take up the entire backyard, since in the Park and Elkins overlay document, it does state that you cannot go up if you do not have an existing second floor. This would severely deter individuals with desires to grow their families and contribute to the Sylvan Park community and schools, and be able to purchase property in our neighborhood. There is no doubt that there is a time and place for historic overlays. However, this is not the time or the place. Sylvan Park adopted an overlay on Park and Elkins several years ago that was not heavily disputed by neighbors because it is indeed historic. The two streets were built much earlier and contain homes much larger in size and with character and historic significance. However, to say the rest of Sylvan Park should adopt this overlay would be out of order. The remainder of the neighborhood is filled with infill housing, ranging in span of many, many decades with little to no unity in the design or time frame. The area has significant change and new construction in every single decade. To say that the whole neighborhood is just as relevant to Nashville's history as that of the homes that are on Park and Elkins would be untrue. Today I ask for you not to defer the vote, but to vote no against the Sylvan Park overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nick Bradley. My family and I live at 4707 Idaho Avenue, our second home we've lived at in Sylvan Park. My comments will be fairly short tonight, but at the Historic Commission meeting on June 18th, Robin Ziegler said that the last survey was a windshield survey done in 2009. This is an overlay that's going to affect nearly 700 homeowners. If the Historic Commission is too busy with its current property load to complete an updated survey, why are they attempting to overlay nearly 700 more homes, close to 40 acres? I ask that you vote against the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christy Wilson, and I reside at 4807 Elkins Avenue. I am in the Park Elkins Historic District and Conservation Overlay District. I did not get involved in that because I thought my neighbors who had been against it in 2005 would stand up against it. Shame on me. So I'm here today to speak against the overlay happening in Sylvan Park, and I think that is for 3 reasons, the first of which is choice. I think homeowners have enough common sense to make choices that are right for them. I've heard mention of the greedy developers, the greedy realtors. I'm a realtor. Last I checked, I'm not greedy, but I do work for clients who hire me. A lot of those people are people who hire me to sell their homes in Sylvan Park, and I've had many clients say they will not sell to a developer. So it is up to me to vet those potential buyers, and I do. They have the choice. They have a choice to who they sell to. You don't have to sell to a developer. If you don't want your house to be torn down, if you don't want anything to happen other than what you have in your house, don't do it. Don't sell it. That is your choice, but someone shouldn't dictate what you could, should, or may do to your home. That is totally up to you. Common sense also somewhere falls in this equation. My house was built in 1902. Clearly, I would not want to tear down my house because it is historic, but I continue to renovate the inside. I continue to do things because that's my choice. If I had a dilapidated home, though, that I could not restore, if I didn't have the financial means to do so, I would want that choice to be able to do whatever I wanted to do to that home. This is a divided issue, and I'm friends with people on both sides, and it's a shame. We've been through this before. But I would ask for you to vote against this because I don't believe it's good for the neighborhood. And one other point on market value, everyone continues to say that overlays have helped the market values in the past few years. Nashville is the it city, as somebody said. All the market values in Nashville have gone up. Every single one of you councilmen and women in your districts, y'all's property values have gone up. Whether you have I'm sure that has from like 2009, but please vote no against this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madeline Conkle. I live in 323 51st Avenue North, and I am with the Pink Flamingo group, and I think that the green bands do have a point that they don't want to destroy old houses. But if we don't pass this law, then if the flamingos want to change our houses, we can. And if the green bands want to not change their houses, they can keep them the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bader.
You may want to raise the microphone.
I live at 5005 Dakota, and I'm against the overlay, and I don't have a pink flamingo in my yard. My house would fall under the overlay. It was built in the 20s. It has lovely historical aluminum siding, and it has a low roof line, and there would be no way if I wanted to, or someone who purchased my house wanted to add on because of the low roof line. It can't fit a dormer, and I'd have to go out the back and again take the backyard, and I think that's unfair to impose that on a house that I purchased without that in place. I agree that, you know, some of the new construction is out of scale and out of context, and I think there are other ways to limit the new construction. The contextual overlay bill is something that's been proposed and I think should be considered. And I would like you to vote against the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Philip Spicer, and I live at 4401 Wyoming. I'm a lifetime resident of Sylvan Park. I grew up in an old house. We can call it historic. It was old. It was horrible, but yet it's still there because the people who now own it, they wanted to keep it. Good for them. Folks in East Nashville are proud of their overlay. Good for them. We don't want it. Clearly, the majority of folks do not want it. Our councilman has decided that what he wants should supersede all. This happened before with the Charlotte Avenue Church of Christ building. That building was old, needed to be torn down, and our councilman used all the red tape he could to kill the deal, and he cost that congregation over $400,000. Did he accomplish anything? No, he just showed who he was. And here we are once again with an overlay being thrown down the people's throats whether they want it or not. As I watch public TV, I see the Historic Zoning Commission. To me, they have become the epitome of red tape as I watch them beat up little ladies over whether they used a 7-inch board versus a 5-inch board on their house. We don't want that. I want to say that I always vote for Councilman Tigard and Garrett because the last time we were here, actually we were at the library last time this came up, but they stood up for the majority and they had the foresight and wisdom to say, some of this stuff we're hearing is not accurate. Let's do a council survey, and that survey has been referenced several times. Neighborhoods change. The neighbors change. Over the 60 years I've lived in our neighborhood, we have lost some great neighbors. Right now, I have a fantastic neighbor who lives about a block down the street. He's 84. In 10 years, he may not be here. I will really regret when he's gone, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not in control of that. I ask you, if someone buys his house that he has lived in his whole life and wants to tear it down, as he said, they can do what they want to because I won't be here anymore. Please protect our property rights, and just because something is old does not make it historic. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Patrick Terry, and I live at 903 Newhoff Lane. That is not in the proposed district. But I hate to say that I don't live in Sylvan Park. I do. I work in Sylvan Park. I've worked in Sylvan Park for 29 years. And yes, I am one of those evil, greedy, disgusting developers that I'm sure there's people back there that despise me. But I'm not. I've seen Sylvan Park change over the past 29 years, and it's a great place. It's a great place without this overlay, and I feel confident it will continue to be a great place without this overlay. We appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Crane. I live at 4504 Idaho Avenue. I'll be brief just to explain that I'm in the same boat as some of the other folks here have already come up. My family and I moved to Nashville last year, purchasing a house in Sylvan Park in February. We love the house precisely because it's historic It's a 1918 home that's about 1,800 square foot, and it's just perfect for a small family like ours. I've got 2 children, one's 7 and one's 1 year old. The problem, of course, is they're not going to be 7 and 1 year old forever. They're growing up way too fast, and we're going to need more room. Maybe in 5 years, it may be in 10 years. On top of that, the way my wife and my family work, we're likely to be the ones who have to take care of our parents when the time comes. So, looking ahead 10 or 20 years, we're clearly going to need more room. And I've looked at the guidelines, and they manage to be both vague in some areas and overly restrictive in others. And it's very hard to figure out, whether we're going to be able to move into whether we are going to be able to stay in the neighborhood, which we really like, should this pass. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My name is Evelyn Rogers, and I'm a native Nashvilleian. I own 2 properties really close to the overlay zone. I do not live in the zone. I live on the edge of Davidson County and Cheatham County right now on South Harpeth Road. We are 3 days away from the 4th of July, and I'm a realtor in Nashville. I've been a realtor here. I'm with Frederick & Clark. I've been a realtor in Nashville since 1985, and I work in Green Hills. And one of the things that our country, we're getting ready to celebrate our birthday on the 4th of July, one of the cornerstones of our freedoms is our right to private property. I strongly believe in that. I don't think a small minority should be able to dictate what people do with their property. I think people should have the right to develop their property. I think in Sylvan Park, I've sold homes in Sylvan Park. I think it's a great neighborhood. I like the diversity in Sylvan Park. I think the new homes in Sylvan Park, some of them can be really nice. And I think if there are objections to what the so-called skinny houses are, there are other less broad ways to address this than this one-size-fits-all conservation overlay. I think it's too broad. I think the process has been too fast. I think there have not been enough open discussions, and I ask you respectfully to vote no on this conservation overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Douglas, and I live at 4908 Wyoming Avenue. My wife and I just moved to Nashville recently and moved to Sylvan Park in April, and we live in one of the houses that was mentioned by one of the supporters of the overlay as being too tall, apparently. It's a brand new house. We love Sylvan Park. We chose it because of its character and its diversity, and we think that this overlay will destroy the character and the diversity. And we just ask that you respect the neighborhood and oppose the overlay. And if you're going to go forward with it, we at least demand that you respect the processes and allow open meetings and the proper surveys to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Dale. My wife, Caroline, and I live at 4708 Nebraska Avenue within the proposed area. We're not money hungry. We don't live in fear. We don't want a McMansion. We're simply a young married couple that wants to grow and live in the neighborhood for the long run. I would also emphasize that we generally support the intention of maintaining the look and feel of the neighborhood. However, we can't support an overlay because of its overreaching nature on property rights, as well as the process by which it has made it this far along to the council. My wife and I are in our 20s, and we're invested for the long term in our community. We used a majority of our savings to purchase our small 2-bedroom home 2 years ago, with the expectation that a major renovation or rebuild would soon be necessary to accommodate our growing family. We've had to freeze the design plans we currently have in progress with an architect because they will not meet the overlay guidelines. We've also learned the facts through meeting with the Historic Commission at our home on how limiting the guidelines are on what we can change with our home structure. Even with allowed dormers and minor roof extensions, we cannot realize our dream to raise our family in our current location because we would not be allowed to change our home's current structure, which is too short in height and piecemealed in width to accommodate the home that we dream of. In addition, we generally support the rights for homeowners to have choices in what they determine best for their property.
We also generally support the recent infill development, commercial development, and improvements to the neighborhood as a sign of progress and success in our community. Beyond the effect on our own home and others in similar situations, we are rightly concerned that this progress will be adversely affected by an overlay. If anything is clear by the representation present tonight, it is that we have not had the fair opportunity to perform our own due diligence as a neighborhood. We do not have a majority in agreement that a clear, defined problem even exists, much less consensus on a given solution. I'm asking each of you to vote no, and therefore against, an overreaching solution to an unagreed upon problem, and allow our neighbors the opportunity to perform our own due diligence and allow those residents within the proposed area to hold their own vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Branch Howard. I was born and raised in Sylvan Park on 42nd in Utah. My wife and my 3-month-old have moved back to the neighborhood, so I've got a lot of stake in this overlay. A lot of the people in these pink t-shirts have a stake in the overlay. The majority of the people who do not wear pink t-shirts, they're not even in the Conservation Overlay District. A lot of my thunder's been stolen, but I'll just reiterate, this overlay is both overbroad, it's also unnecessary. There are zoning tools, there are other bills that are making their way through that can accomplish the same things, that can get rid of the too skinny houses. This giant overbroad legislation is unnecessary. It's government regulation for the sake of government regulation. My property law teacher taught me that property rights are like a bundle of sticks. And effectively, this overlay is like somebody who has no stake in my property, reaching into my bundle of sticks, taking them and breaking them over their knee just because they feel it looks better. I don't really know that that's okay. I wanted to address a couple things that I've heard over the case of this night. First of which is we're freezing time at 1945. In 1945, a couple things happened. The UN was established. Atomic bombs were dropped. The Dow Jones high was 195. The low was 155. This is not 1945. This is 2014. Nashville is a hot city. It's a thriving city. One way to make sure that it's not a thriving city is to take one of its most thriving neighborhoods and restrict it every way possible. So if that's the goal, then we should pass this. We should make Nashville undesirable. I've heard that we wanted to stabilize values. To me, that means suppress values. And if we're going to suppress values, do we need to stop the revitalization of Charlotte Avenue? I guess we can pass bills to do that as well. I've heard 7 times by the proponents that this is driven by developers. One person in a pink t-shirt that's spoken is a developer. The rest of us are homeowners and people wanting to buy houses in this district. The values didn't go up in the area because of the overlay. They went up because time elapsed and because home values have gone up since 2005. It's possible to live in smaller houses. A family of 7 lived in 900 square feet. That's not an argument allowing someone to force other people and future generations to do the same. My wife and I would just want to make exterior changes, turn a triplex into a duplex, and we'd have to come here. I'd have to take time off work to do that, and I don't think that is acceptable. Please vote no.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Leslie Riley. I live at 4302 Utah Avenue. I brought Dale Carnegie's Public Speaking for Influencing Men and Women in Business for Luck. To make plans for someone else's home without their consent is wrong. If the overlay proponents were to create a private foundation and raise money to buy the houses that they do seemingly want to freeze in time, I would applaud them. I would probably contribute. But I think they find it easier to impose their will through legislation on houses and people they don't own.
The fact that a significant percentage of the overlay proponents have already completed their construction projects seems conspicuously convenient for them. I would never dream of restricting my neighbors' freedoms to fulfill their desires and plans for their own lives and properties. So why do Councilman Holloman and his proponent friends not extend to me the same consideration and respect? I suspect that they reserve their care and concern for inanimate objects rather than for the human beings who reside in them. I urge you to vote against the Sylvan Park overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I am Joey Staubitz. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council, for hearing me this evening. I live at 221 38th Avenue North in Sylvan Park, and I'm opposed to this bill for several reasons. I'll try to use my 3 minutes to touch on just a couple of the practical aspects. My husband and I work in the special education field, so we are evidence that teachers, police officers, nurses can still find homes in Sylvan Park they can afford, which is wonderful. We're so lucky to be in Sylvan Park. We're luckier even still for two additional reasons. One, we're just outside the overlay expansion zone. Two, we moved into a house that was built in 1940, and if we'd happened to find that house a couple blocks over, we'd be a little more worried about what kind of renovations we could do, because we bought what we could afford, not necessarily what we'll need in the long term, in the hopes that we could make it into what we need. But lucky reason number two, sometime in the last 20 years, somebody who owned the home before us closed in the front porch, which is wonderful because we have a kid's bedroom up there that's tiny but usable. We have some office space, and we have a reception area. I have decorated this kid's room for our first child that we do not have. But while we're glad this was already done, this front porch enclosure, before we got in, it is a renovation we could have made ourselves in a few years, because it's one that provides a lot of bang for buck. For the expense, it provides a lot of additional square footage. But with the conservation overlay, this can't be done. This is expressly stated as inappropriate in the Historic Zoning Commission's guidelines. And the Historic Commission understandably can't necessarily determine in advance what changes people can make to their homes, especially for specific situations. But we do know that their decisions are made with price as no object. Unfortunately, for these homeowners who need to make additions and expansions and front porch enclosures on their small homes, price is an object. They literally can't afford for their options to be limited. So that is one problem I see with this overlay. Secondly, and these concerns have been expressed this evening, this tear-down epidemic has got everybody worried. I think that people on both sides of this issue are concerned about preserving neighborhood charm, and I simply hope that we can have charm as new things are built, and we preserve the things that are worth preserving. So in terms of what's worth preserving, some of the homes protected by the proposed overlay are old, maybe historic, but they have lead plumbing, ungrounded and knob and tube electrical wiring, cracked foundations, sagging floors, and other unsafe structural characteristics. For example, our 1940 home was built on what is quite literally a pile of rocks. So if you roll a marble in the center of the floor, it's going to hit the wall and shatter. It's crazy in there. So on average, some of these homes that are being replaced need to be, and it's too expensive to renovate them for people like us. So please don't vote for this bill.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Griffin Dunham with the house on Idaho Avenue, 4807. A lot of the topics that I was intending on discussing here tonight have already been spoken about, fortunately by people that were much more articulate and charismatic. So I'd like to the extent that you found those comments persuasive, I'd like to incorporate those. If you didn't find them persuasive, I don't want to incorporate those. We'll leave those out. But I do want to speak about 2 points. One is I was able to attend the Planning Commission meeting. And what I found to be interesting about that is they said that they couldn't ever recall disapproving a historic overlay, ever. And they did, 4-2. And they cited a few reasons. One is that there was lack of consensus, and I believe that the other one was that there just still needed to be some more revisions that were made. And the only reason I mention that is because to the extent that there's deference to Councilman Holloman, and I understand that it's a tight-knit community and there's credibility, we also ask that you give deference to the Planning Commission and their findings after they had an opportunity after 3 hours to think about all the issues. So that's the first point. The second point about the consensus that the Planning Commission mentioned that you see here, I understand that both sides are saying that we have a majority and the other side is going to disagree with that. And so really what it comes down to, we can talk about February, we can talk about before February, we can talk about June of 2014, but really the proof is in who showed up tonight. If you look at who's here tonight, it's an overwhelming majority that are opposed to the overlay. So let the attendance here dictate whether or not there's a consensus. Last point I'll make is just about my personal experience. I don't know what it means to be historic. I understand that there was a decision that was made that declares that I'm in a historic area, but I know that my neighbor has a 1930 house, I have a 1940 house, the neighbor next to me has a 1950 house. I think that there is actually a bomb shelter on the other side of that person's house that I can promise you can withstand any earthquake, tornado, or bomb that ever occurs, and then a 2010 house after that. So Park and Elkins appear to me, for those that have gone through there also, to be truly historic. They're beautiful old homes. We just have an eclectic, and throughout the other parts, there's an eclectic diversity of houses that don't have the same historic feel. So I say this only to allow those that haven't had the opportunity to drive through to give some peace of mind that you're not you're not making decisions about houses that are like those on Park and Elkins. Those neighborhoods are not similarly situated. And with that, I just ask that you vote against the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Maitland, and I have a home on Idaho Avenue. And I don't want to be repetitive or take up any more time. I just wanted to say that I'm against it, and I'd appreciate voting against it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the Metro Council, thank you for hearing my comments this evening. My name is John Stabitz, and I live at 221 38th Avenue North in Sylvan Park. You've heard a lot about the homes of our neighborhood from this bill's proponents. My wife and I love that our new neighborhood has a history and a character that can be seen in some of the houses, but what we love most of all is the people who live here now. Tonight, I want to focus on the people affected by this overlay expansion. I volunteered to collect petition signatures largely out of a desire to give voice to this neighborhood's current preferences. I didn't know what they were before this petition was completed. Last week, over the course of 4 days, I walked the entire length of Utah affected by this overlay, from Sylvan Park Elementary to the edge of the new proposed expansion at 42nd. I knocked on every door on that stretch at least once, and some 2 or 3 times. To say that I badgered anyone or twisted any arms could not be further from the truth. Every person I surveyed who opposed, a number I could count on one hand, are all here tonight. All of them would have to truthfully testify that I left their porch as soon as they said they didn't want to sign. And one woman back there took the time to tell me why she liked this bill, and I politely listened without arguing. However, despite our sincere efforts to make this petition effort fair, if there's anyone who wishes to remove their name from the petition after the bill is amended, we'll have a copy of that at any public meeting, and they can do so. There's no trickery that we're trying to pull here. Through these conversations, there were several notable observations as I talked to these folks. Commonly, I'd come to the door and people would say, "What is this? How will this affect my house?" I don't know enough about it to inform them about it. I said, I'm not really sure. There are copies of the bill available online. There's going to be a second reading before this group very soon, and I recommend that you get informed. And I'm not the one to do it. And that's exactly how these conversations went. Most people had no idea what was happening, and it wasn't because they were lazy or disinterested members of our community. Many of them had very good reasons for not being up on this. Maybe they missed a mailer that came in their mailbox. I know one particular family I spoke with that had a baby within the past month, and they've been very occupied with that and haven't had time to keep up with all this. There's another gentleman I spoke with who had just moved here from Iowa, and he had only been in his house for less than a month. He hasn't had time to catch up with all this. By and large, I think our community could benefit, whether people have been here for a while or not, from a little more time to understand this and figure out how it affects them. I think that the most notable interaction I had was with a woman. She's a great-grandmother, in fact, and she lives within a block of Sylvan Park Elementary. She's lived there for 40 years, which I think is more than anybody behind me can say. When her husband and she purchased that home 40 years ago, they made many renovations over the years. They raised her children. Her grandchildren come over all the time. Now they have children. Her great-grandchildren come here. She said this neighborhood has changed a lot over the years. She told me, I don't like the skinny houses in particular, but she said, you know, a lot of the new homes look fine to me. And she said, I'm going to go ahead and sign that petition. I don't want this overlay bill to come in place and keep other people from doing what my family is able to do. Please vote to defeat this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Terry. I live at 6525 Jocelyn Hollow Road, which is outside of the area, but I do own a home in the area. I'd like to talk a little bit to the process. I got this pink card saying there was a meeting April 3rd. At that meeting, that area was never specifically defined, and they said that Historic was going to look into what we're talking about and do their survey and then figure out what the area was going to be. The next thing I know is I got a letter from Historic saying they're having a meeting and this is the area. So I never heard of a meeting between then and the Historic meeting, so I think the process is not right. 2 days before the Historic meeting, we had another meeting, a community meeting. At that time, it was limited to an hour and to the facilities. We were told that's all we got the area for. On June 18th, Historic voted for it. On June 26th, the Planning Commission recommended disapproval, and here we are today, July 1. So within less than 2 weeks period of time, to my knowledge, we only had 2 meetings. There was probably some neighborhood meetings or something. I didn't know about them. But I think the process has been rushed. I don't think there's been enough discussion about it. I think the fact that the process has been rushed and that Historic votes for the thing before they even completed their survey, I think that hurts the process. I think it hurts Historic. I think it hurts Historic when all these neighbors, if this thing was to pass, got to go down and get a permit, and then they got to deal with somebody from Historic that's telling them that, no, you can't do that, or no, I don't like this, but this to me looks better. I don't think anybody at Historic's paying those people's mortgage. And yeah, I ask you to vote against this. I don't think it's right. I think it does strip people's property rights. I don't think it does. I know it does. And it's just not right for another level of bureaucracy to be telling people what to do with their own property that they're paying for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Hagelgans, and I live at 140 51st Avenue North. My husband Tony and my son Andrew knocked on many of the doors in our neighborhood. My husband would come home from work, maybe eat, change clothes, and head out, usually coming home after dark. This has continued for the last several weeks. I tell you this because of his passion for his neighborhood and to also teach my son Andrew a little lesson about civic duty. My husband also feels blessed to have met so many great neighbors. He has worked very hard, along with many others, to obtain these numbers. 330 have signed the petition. 248 signed to individual properties within our boundary of this overlay. 26 of those have identified themselves as pro-overlay. Tony and Andrew and many others have worked as hard to cover as many homes as possible. What more do we have to do to prove a conservation overlay will not work in Sylvan Park? Please end this tonight, and please vote no against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hagelgans, and I live at 140 51st Avenue North. I knocked on a lot of doors this summer with my dad for the petition. I rode on my scooter while my dad walked. We knocked on a lot of doors, and I can truthfully tell you the neighborhood does not want this overlay. Thank you, and please vote against this.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor, Councilman, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about this important subject. My name is Mark Lambert. I live at 4302 Utah Avenue. I've got 4 parcels within this proposed overlay. Very, very concerned about this. Also, I own the historic old Metro number 13 Fire Hall up on Charlotte Avenue. Some of you may know me. I service and repair antique cars up there, vintage cars. In fact, some of our viewing audience at home, I should apologize to you. Maybe you've been stuck behind me in traffic as I'm going turtle speed down one of the streets in a 100-year-old vehicle. I'm very, very interested in historic things, houses, cars. Maybe I can shed a little light on this. Let's work back a little bit to June the 1st, 2 days before this was filed by the councilman. A few of our young representatives met with the councilman, and they said, gee, this is going too fast. We want to work with you. We want to do something. You know what they were told? To a man, they told me. The councilman looked him in the eye and he said, I don't care what you guys do. I've got the votes for this. Can you imagine telling a constituent that you have a vote for a bill that's not even filed, that you haven't heard the public discussion on? This does immense damage to confidence. I don't appreciate it. I know my young friends who you've heard from tonight don't appreciate it. Now that poisoned this. You ask why we're so against this? We don't want any overlay zoning, and that's part of the reason. So I can't imagine treating constituents this way, but this is important that you understand this. So I hope that you'll vote against this tonight. Please vote no. Otherwise, you're just delaying this process. We don't want any part of overlay zoning. There are other tools, and we're open to that discussion, as Councilman Holloman was told way back on June 1st. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilmen and women and vice mayor. My name is Shannon Conkle. I live on 51st, and I had zero intention of speaking to you this evening. But I am the mother of the brave little girl who, unbeknownst to me, came up here earlier. I have taught my daughter not necessarily to agree with my opinions at all times, but to form her own. And I've also taught her to speak up for what she thinks is right, and also to be appreciative of the liberties and freedoms she has in this country. We've also lived in another country for a time. One of those liberties and freedoms, which my grandfather, great-grandfather, brother, uncle all fought for, is for us to be able to have the rights we have in this country. And as a single mother, I'm very proud to have been able to purchase a home in Sylvan Park, where my daughter goes to an excellent school and where we can have a safe neighborhood and wonderful neighbors on both sides of this issue. And Jason, I, with all due respect, as your constituent, would sure appreciate if you were listening to those of us who are speaking rather than being on your phone and having sidebar conversations. For the rest of you, I appreciate your attention. We do not want this overlay. We want to have the freedom to choose for ourselves. I live in a small, older home. I have no intention of tearing it down. I have no intention of modifying it beyond what's necessary, but I do want to have the right to do that at my discretion. And I would appreciate your vote no against this overlay. Thank you so much for your time and for your service.
Thank you.
My name's Mary Lynn Vaughn, and I live at 5001 Idaho. And no, I didn't intend to speak, and yes, I'm nervous. But I am against the overlay for a couple of reasons. First of all, the petition that went around, they came, knocked on my door, and said, do you want to sign it? I signed it, they left. If I hadn't done it, there wouldn't have been any arm twisting or any preaching at me that I need to have it done. The other issue that concerns me is I live on a corner lot. So the overlay would affect two sides of my lot. Fortunately, I've already added on, but there are a lot of people that haven't. And to put an overlay in and have to have two sides approved does make a difference. So I ask you to vote against the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Hagelgans, and I live at 140 51st Avenue North. We want to preserve truly historic homes. The challenge is that historic conversation zoning will not work in Sylvan Park. We have construction across many decades of various architectural styles, many built for workers in the factories of Charlotte Pike who built what they could afford at that time. We have differing setbacks, roof pitches, and size. Many of these are not historic. They're just old. Dictating taste and applying a blanket amending of someone's property rights isn't right. We are told by our councilmen that we are misinformed. Trust me, Jason, we are informed. Calling us misinformed is a slap in the face to the 90% of homeowners against this moving forward and who have signed the petition thus far. And a slap in the face to the Metro Planning Commission who agree this is not the proper zoning for Sylvan Park. It is immoral that a few people are pushing this against the will of an entire neighborhood. If any of you had 90% of your constituents in a neighborhood against something this strongly, would you be pursuing it? Our opponents, just as in 2005, have once again fabricated numbers of support. They have misled and connived. We the people say enough. This is not the right zoning approach for Sylvan Park. I ask that you listen to the residents, listen to the Planning Commission, vote this down. You will be asked to just go ahead, vote yes, I'll defer it, I'll get more support, before third reading. He will not get more support before third reading. Remove this bill, remove it now. Let us go on with our lives. Let us work to develop community-inspired ideas. This will not happen until you vote this bill down. I ask that you do it unanimously. We have done a door-to-door poll that we have made public at the Planning Commission, and now the proponents still have not released anything of their push poll, which they claim 2-to-1 support. We're shocked and rather disgusted that a councilman would start a bill that has little to no neighborhood awareness and has very little neighborhood support. This matter wasted this council's time in 2005. It wasted your money in 2006 when you had to pay for a poll that showed that the neighborhood was 66% opposed, which is what we were telling you then. It's wasting your time now because we're telling you now it's 90% opposed. We ask that you shut this down tonight, kill this bill, end this insanity. Please, kill this bill.
Thank you. The public hearing. Order, please. Public hearing is closed. Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I move to defer with a brief explanation.
Indefinite or what?
I'm sorry, indefinite deferral at this time.
Have a motion and a second on indefinite deferral.
Members of the council, as you can see, this is a difficult issue in my neighborhood. I would ask for your patience in this. It's something that I have dealt with during my entire time on the council. I would also say to you that in 7 years in serving in this body, in all of the bills that I brought, which have included some large and at times contentious rezonings, I've had less than a dozen people ever combined come and speak against any bill that I've brought to you. I wish that this was in a place where you didn't have to spend hours here tonight. And so for that, I apologize, but I assure you it is not because I haven't worked on this issue. And I continue to work on this issue. And so I ask for your patience, and tonight I ask for deferral. And I hope that the same people that spoke with passion here tonight will invest that kind of passion in meeting with their neighbors and trying to reach common ground and not just divide and conquer and draw lines in the sand. And I hope that's going to happen, and I'm going to try to get that done. And if not, then I may bring it back to you, and we may just have to decide. But I hope that won't be the case. So with that, I renew my motion to defer.
Councilman Tigert, did you wish to speak on the motion to defer?
I did, since I do have a little experience in this issue. It's almost like deja vu all over again, 2005, 6, back in the days.
Councilman.
Yes, ma'am. I love to get slapped on the wrist.
You take it so well, though.
I do, thank you. The reason I normally wouldn't speak on a deferral motion, but I had every intention tonight of forcing some type of up or down vote. But the willingness of the district council member to seek indefinite deferral, and hopefully the promise of all of us that would be willing to work with this neighborhood. If you look at the power, the passion, the articulate nature of these folks on both sides of the issue, if you think of what they could do working together in their neighborhood, there's such a passion there and a love for their community that it's a shame that a divisive issue like this has to come forward. I think working with Mr. Sloan, Mr. Lehman, and all the folks at the Planning Commission and Historic, there's a solution out there that would please everyone. And so I just pledged to Councilman Holloman that if I can be of service, 4 terms as a district council member during the growth years of Bellevue, there hadn't been a lot I haven't seen from a district side. And that means there's compromise, it means there's time, there's energy, there's effort. There may be steering committees where you don't ask 400 people to come together in an auditorium, but a small group that have the feel of their constituency and their concerns there to hammer out a compromise. I just hope that's the case, because this is too great a neighborhood in Nashville to let this consume them. So I do support the deferral motion, and I think that's the correct move. Thank you.
Councilman Holloman.
I just want to thank Councilman Tiger and look forward to seeing him in my district for numerous meetings. I appreciate the offer, and I'm going to take you up on it. So
All in favor of indefinite deferral, please say aye. Opposed, no. Indefinite deferral passes. Next is BL 2014-808, changes .38 acres from OR20, RM20, and OR28 to MULA. Please leave quietly. We have the rest of our agenda. Please leave quietly. Properties located at 813 and 816B 19th Avenue North and 19th Avenue North unnumbered at the intersection of Herman and 19th Avenue North. Councilmember Langster.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to ask at this time for a 1-month deferral with a brief explanation.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Langster.
Thank you. This is some important legislation that makes some major changes. I have not been in contact with the owner, DY Properties 2 LLC. I would like to ask them at this time, let's get together and talk and be ready in 1 month's deferral. Thank you. Move again for deferral.
All in favor of the deferral, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-809 changes .91 acres from R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 207 and 209 Gentry Avenue to permit up to 10 residential dwelling units. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I'd move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in support wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. State your name and address, please.
Members, my name is Brett Withers. I live at 1113 Granada Avenue. I am the president of the Eastwood Neighborhood Association in which this property lies. This has been a proposal that has been vetted with my neighborhood and our council member for approximately a year. It's been deferred a couple times. We've had a number of discussions on it. I think that quite a few of my neighbors have reached a place where they're okay with this proposal and the amount of density that it provides. They're not crazy about it, but I think that we've reached enough compromise that I feel comfortable recommending it for approval. It is up for second reading, and I know that Councilmember Westerholm will work with any neighbors that have concerns and myself and Mr. Beard to resolve any technical issues remaining in the SP. Thank you.
Anyone in opposition wishing to speak?
Hi, my name's Alex Schoaf. I live at 215 Fall Street. Lived in Nashville for 4 years. My wife and I bought this house about 7 weeks ago. And I have seen the plans for the development, and I think, frankly, it seems the houses individually seem very tasteful and in line with the character of the neighborhood. However, I'm not so comfortable with the scope and volume of the development. Though I'm the only person here, I guess, in opposition, I can assure you that my neighbors are concerned. As soon as I shook hands with my across the street neighbor, he introduced me to his wife, and he brought out the plans for the development. And his property backs directly up to it, and he was very concerned. As it is now, we're on the northwest corner of Gentry Avenue and Fall Street, and if one or two of our neighbors have a party on a Friday night, either my wife or myself may not be able to park within 15 feet of any part of our property. Already there's a parking issue. By my count right now, there are only 5 homes on all of Gentry Avenue. It's a 2-block street, and we're talking about tripling the number of homes in 1 year. So I think that's excessive. I have nothing against developing the vacant lots within reason, and I just like the neighborhood to continue to remind me of the neighborhood where I grew up, where kids walked to school, people played football in the street, and I don't want to have to dodge cars just to get down to Eastland Avenue because of all the parking on the street. That's basically it. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Westerheim.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I would like to move approval with brief comment.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember.
I would just like to state that I do appreciate those who are here this evening who waited for our time on the agenda. I wanted to express my support of this project based on the amount and the duration of the conversation that's gone into this development. As Mr. Withers alluded to, this has been going on for a bit over a year, and we've met numerous times in official neighborhood meetings and meetings at coffee shops, and we've tried to figure out the best way to address this, the concerns of the neighbors, and I feel as if we've worked towards an end that, while not perfect by everyone's perspective, still reflects a good compromise that I think achieves what each party is trying to work towards. This type of development is essentially adjacent to the area that I think was falsely referred to as 3 Points in a recent publication. It's also referred to as the Walden area, the Rosebank area, but it is in the heart of Eastwood Neighbors and Lachlan Springs, and this is an area that is seeing a lot of pressures of development, and this is an area that is changing. What a project like this does, in my mind, actually helps with a lot of the issues that people mention about traffic and parking and issues, because by focusing density within a block of a development, a block from bike lanes, a block from transit lines, you increase the number of pedestrian trips, and you increase the number of trips that do not require cars. I wish I could tell every neighbor that they will always have a place to park in front of their house, but the on-street parking that's there is something that we're trying to deal with as best we can in every part of the neighborhood. I don't want to linger. I know we've had a long night already, but I believe that this bill is moving in a good direction. I would be happy to meet with the gentleman who's here tonight to go over any specific questions he has, and I'll be happy to meet with you afterwards out in the hall. I do feel this does represent a lot of compromise that has been very involved, and it represents a lot of engagement with the community. And for that reason, I would renew my request to move forward.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. If you are in the chamber, please find a seat. If there's not a seat available, you can go out to the mezzanine. BL 2014-810 changes 96 acres from R10 to RS10 zoning for properties located along Anderson Road, Blue Water Drive, Blue Water Trace, Blue Water Way, Brantley Drive, Cedar Cliff Road, Charlton Drive, Cherry Hills Drive, Cold Springs Drive, Lyra Jones Drive, Moss Landing Drive, Moss Spring Drive, Mossdale Drive, Owendale Drive, Rogers Court, and Safford View Drive. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, I'd like to move to open the public hearing.
We will need to see the slides first, as it was disapproved by the Planning Commission.
Yes, this is a request to rezone from R10 to RS10. These are the properties shown on the screen outlined in red. This is the area in the Antioch Priest Lake Community Plan. It's south of Moss Springs Drive here. Owendale Drive, I believe, is right on the western side. This is a closer view. This was disapproved by the Planning Commission as submitted, as filed at council, but is recommended for approval with a substitute ordinance. And these are the properties shown in gray. Currently they're zoned R10, which allow for single family and two family homes. And the proposed zoning is RS10, which allows for single family only. And it falls within the T3 Suburban Neighborhood Maintenance Policy, which generally calls for things to not change quite as much as an evolving policy. However, it does allow for duplexes and a variety of housing types. So some of the things that the Planning Commission found as a reason for disapproval, that changing from R to RS would limit housing diversity and would limit the possibility of infill development in the future, which is a good for investment in neighborhoods. What the substitute ordinance that was recommended would do would keep strategic lots at strategic locations at corner lots that would remain with R zoning, where a duplex could still go on a larger corner lot situation. So the substitute ordinance that was recommended would keep these lots shown in red zoned for two family, while it would rezone the rest of the area to RS. So with that, the Planning Commission recommended disapproval of the bill as filed, but approval with that substitute ordinance.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in support wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. Anyone in opposition wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and council members. I'm Brad Scarborough. I'm here on behalf of Moss Springs LLC, which is one of the major property owners that would be affected by this change. And I had presented some materials for the council members, and I also would like those materials to be made part of the record, so I don't want to forget that before I sit down. Essentially, Moss Springs LLC owns a large tract of land, which on your map is in the center toward the top where the arrow is pointing. And it's approximately a 6-acre tract. That property was recently approved by Planning Commission for a subdivision, which would essentially complete all the area that you see in yellow, complete the development build out of that area. And essentially the changing of this zoning would devalue Moss Springs property, and that's one of several reasons why they are opposed to it. This is, as was mentioned by staff, this is an area where you can have two single-family dwellings on a single lot in a subdivision, and only when it's a certain percentage of the subdivision. And this downzoning bill would essentially eliminate the ability to have the 2 single-family dwellings on a single lot. This, as was mentioned, this is a bill that's not, it's adverse to the critical plan that Metro has and the goals therewith. It does not provide for a variety of, or a range of housing choices. It also does not support infill development. And it's Moss Springs' position that essentially this bill is a spot zoning of Moss Springs property because all the rest of the properties are already built out. So the only property that's not built out is the Moss Springs property, and we take the position that it would be a spot zoning, which would potentially would not withstand a legal challenge. Nevertheless, Moss Springs acquired this property with the intent to develop it as zoned, has invested substantial amounts of money and time with engineers, design professionals, subdivision plat, concept plans, going through planning commission, and they intend and wish to have it built out as zoned. And you will hear things about duplexes, but in this new subdivision, there will not be any duplexes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Smith. I'm also the builder for the property. I will be residing on the property that is the original dwelling as this property is being built out. The main reason for me building in this area is to give more people, our families, our friends that are living on the streets, that don't need to be living on the streets, we're giving them a place to go. And, well, whether you like it or not, people need homes. People like you.
Please address the council.
Yeah, they need homes too. But we're, like he said, we're not, I mean, there's not going to be any duplexes on it. They're all single family homes. There shouldn't be any issues about the whole property being built out. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Neighbors. And council members, I apologize, but we did not have anybody come to the Planning Commission meeting in opposition to the bill that was passed unanimously on last Thursday by the Planning Commission, the substitute, which is what I am going to be moving on third reading. There were a substantial amount of neighbors who came out to the Planning Commission. That is noted in the record as well, and the planning staff can attest to that if you all need to hear from them, the number of people that came out to the Planning Commission meeting. Many of the neighbors called me and asked me, should they come here to the public hearing tonight? We, made an agreement together that it wasn't necessary because we didn't see any opposition at the Planning Commission meeting. So therefore, many of them are not here tonight with the understanding that it was going to pass as substituted on third reading since it was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission and staff. And so with that, we've worked on this tremendously hard in our community to ensure that contextually our area develops in a pattern that's consistent with the surrounding homes. I ask for your approval on second reading because I will be sharing the information that came from the Planning Commission meeting and committee, and I'll be moving the substitute on third. So with that, I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-811 changes 5.43 acres from IR to IG zoning for properties located at 701 Stanley Street and Stanley Street unnumbered at the southeast corner of Stanley Street and Visco Drive. Councilmember Stein.
On behalf of Councilwoman Gilmore, I request the public hearing be open.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Stein.
Move approval on second reading.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Tiger.
I just wanted to remind Councilman Holloman that now that Councilman Stein is a seasoned zoning expert, he needs to be invited to your meetings also.
All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
BL 2014-812 by Councilmember Westerholm makes provisions to 39.58 acres of the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to various properties located along Boscobel Street, Lillian Street, South 14th Street, South 15th Street, South 16th Street, South 17th Street, and Shelby Avenue. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I would like to move to open the public hearing.
Could I see a show of hands of those in support of the bill? And a show of hands of those opposed? Seeing none opposed, would anyone in favor of the bill like to speak? If you would, line up at the lectern. Seeing no one to speak, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. With that, I would move approval with brief comment.
There's a motion properly seconded for approval. Councilmember Westerholm, you're recognized.
I would just like to state that this is the second portion of the previous extension of Laughlin Springs Conservation Overlay that this body passed earlier. And with that, I would renew my motion.
There's a motion properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? And the bill is passed. BL 2014-813 by Councilmember Moore changes 1.24 acres from IR to SP zoning for property located at 1225 4th Avenue South to permit a residential and office development. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Pro Tem. I move to open the public hearing, please.
All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Seeing no one in opposition, would anyone in favor like to speak? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Moore.
I move for approval with a very, very brief comment, as my seatmate said.
There is a motion and a second. Councilmember Moore.
I just want to say that the Woodstock at Chestnut Hill, they started their community meetings in January and continue with those community meetings honored my request of giving me the documentation, and I do appreciate that of this group working together to try to reach out to the neighbors about their proposal development. So with that being said, Chair, I again renew my motion for approval.
There's a motion properly seconded for approval. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, and the bill is passed. BL 2014-814 by Councilmember Banks changes 0.65 acres from AR2A to RS10 zoning for property located at Edmondson Pike Unnumbered east of Bryce Road. Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Chair. Move to open public hearing.
If you are in favor, would you please signify by raising your hand? Those opposed? Seeing no one in opposition, would anyone in favor like to speak? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Banks.
I'd like to make a motion to move it forward.
That's a motion properly seconded for approval. No brief comment, Councilmember Banks?
No, thank you. Not
tonight.
Thank
you. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, and the bill is passed. Next is BL 2014-815 by Councilmember Westerholm. Changes 9.9 acres from R10 to SP zoning for properties located at 801 Rosebank Avenue and Eastland Avenue unnumbered at the southeast corner of Rosebank Avenue and Eastland Avenue to permit up to 62 residential dwelling units and up to 1,300 square feet of commercial uses. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I'd like to move to open the public hearing.
Could I see a show of hands of those in favor? And anyone opposed? All right. Would anyone in favor like to speak? Please line up at the lectern. State your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Josh Randolph. I live at 1628 Shelby Avenue. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm here today representing the owner and applicant Aerial Development Group. On behalf of our entire team, along with Hawkins Partners and Civil Site Design Group, I'd like to personally thank Peter Westerholm for all of his hard work over the past 11 months. He's been involved with the project since the beginning, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to continually meet with our team and with the neighborhood to ensure that East Greenway Park is a win for Nashville. I'd also like to thank the president of Rosebank Neighbors in 8 West. Since we began back in August of 2013, we have had 5 neighborhood meetings. The community process in rezoning this project has been incredible. Many of the neighbors went to each of the 5 meetings we held, and with their comments, feedback throughout the year, they've helped to shape and change the plan for the better. We are all very, very excited to be working on this project with its proximity to Shelby Parks and its attention to community atmosphere. We think East Greenway Park will be a wonderful place for many to call home. I appreciate your time and consideration for this project, and we would ask for your approval. Next, I'll have Kim Hawkins with Hawkins Partners touch on some of the details in the project. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Kim Hawkins, 2205 Natchez Trace, and I'm here tonight with Hawkins Partners working with Aerial Development. Aerial purchased this 9.9 acre vacant property attracted by its location at the intersection of 2 major collector streets, Rosebank and Eastland, and the immediate proximity to Shelby Bottoms, I think one of our city's great assets. Aerial's interest is to create walkable, bikeable residential development in the context of existing developed communities in order to enhance both. The current R10 zoning allows for 53 single-family and duplex units. The SP proposal requests an increase of 9 units, and all of the homes are detached single-family homes. The site is one of the largest undeveloped residential zone tracts in the area with a number of physical site attributes. And through the application of an SP zoning, we've retained over 41% of the total site area's open space, which allows us to provide large areas of tree save for the most significant trees on the site. We've provided an average 250-foot building setback from the rear property line to be sensitive to the views from Shelby Bottoms. And we've added 20-foot wide landscape buffers on all of the non-street property lines. We've also incorporated low-impact development throughout the development, like pervious pavements and bioretention, to minimize detention on the site. Through the SP, we voluntarily provided height restrictions beyond what would be required for the property through traditional zoning. And in keeping with other successful models in and around East Nashville, we've proposed a small 1,300 square foot neighborhood retail use at the corner of Rosebank and Eastland. A consistent theme that we've heard throughout the community meetings was a need for connectivity. And this area of East Nashville actually has limited sidewalks. So this development is voluntarily providing funds to add sidewalks to fill the gaps along Eastland and along Rosebank in the existing terminus of sidewalks at Meadow Rose, and add a new greenway connection from the development to the existing Shelby Bottoms Greenway Trail. And finally, this SP is consistent with the newly adopted planning policy of suburban neighborhood evolving and suburban neighborhood center. So I ask your approval consistent with the Planning Commission's unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. My name is Michael Nozlowski. I live at 1711 Sevier. I lived in Nashville for about 8 years now in a variety of places. I lived downtown, I lived in Green Hills. And I personally love seeing the sustained growth of this great city. I'm a big fan of this project for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've heard many times tonight people worried about being priced out of neighborhoods and things like that. This developer has taken great lengths to ensure that there will be a variety of houses at a variety of price points to sustain diversity in the neighborhood. I also like the walkability of this project as well. We don't have a ton of walkable neighborhoods, but neighborhoods like this are going to give people access to the park. It's going to give people access to use less of their cars and more of the neighborhood. And I'm actually very impressed with the fact that this developer is going outside development and even putting sidewalks to further enhance that walkability. So with those things in mind, it's a great project and I'm a big fan of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Brett Withers. I live at 1113 Granada Avenue. I think we started out this evening with one of my dear friends and colleagues giving a presentation that in many ways I agree with on SPs and what is an appropriate use of an SP. Some of the SPs that are put forward in our communities quite frankly baffle the communities themselves in which they're being implemented because we're not sure exactly what the benefit is other than for the developer. I think that this particular parcel is an excellent use of an SP, and I think that it is the right tool to use for a unique parcel that does have slope issues, does have natural preservation goals, and most importantly, this actually, in fact, does add sidewalks, which are desperately needed, in addition to on their own site, connecting that site to an existing sidewalk network. So all of those things, I think, do speak well for, not only for this project specifically, but this is the type of SP that we want to have in our communities where there is a real obvious benefit for the community at large in addition to the development rights of the developers themselves. Having said that, I'm not a member of that neighborhood and I haven't actually attended any of those particular meetings, so I'll defer to neighborhood representatives about the details of that. But I just wanted to reiterate that this type of design that really does tackle difficult problems and provides a benefit to the community is something that we want to see more of in SPs. Thank you very much.
Those in opposition who wish to speak, please line up at the lectern.
Good evening, Council. My name is Brooke Skurlock, and I live at 841 Rose Park Drive. I'm a board member of the Rosebank Neighbors Association and have been at every meeting since we started these meetings with Ariel. I do want to take time to say thank you to Ariel for the time and effort that they have given to the neighbors to listen to their concerns. They certainly have taken some of the recommendations back and made adjustments, especially in concerns of cost and size. I also want to say that we appreciate their efforts to improve the safety and connectability of the neighborhood with sidewalks. However, having listened to neighbors at these meetings, phone calls, emails, text messages, social media, I have to say that the neighbors overall are overwhelmingly in opposition to this SP. It is their thought that the numbers are just too large, that the neighborhood does not have the resources in place to adequately support a number of 62 houses, that even with the sidewalks that Ariel is going to put in place, that they don't really go anywhere, that we don't have sidewalks in other parts to connect it, and that it's not going to be a safe walkable area. It's just going to be more homes and more cars and make it more dangerous. So because of those concerns, I do have to speak in opposition. We've heard Ariel talk about that the proximity to the parks is what makes it attractive, and I agree. That's why we all live there. That's why the neighbors are there. The worry, again, is that when you add 62 homes in and you back it up onto a park, that the park's not going to be quite so attractive with the 62 homes there, and that they're going to be taking away an area that is largely undeveloped, that we do have lots of beautiful resources on, and they're going to develop it. So I do ask you to take those things into consideration, and I ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Josh Chester. I live at 815 Rosebank. Just to briefly reiterate what Brooke said, I too am a board member of the Rosebank Neighbors Association, and we have certainly appreciated working with Ariel. They've been receptive to things said at the many meetings, all of which I've attended. But what they'll have to tell you, and what Councilman Westerholm will have to tell you, and Councilman Davis will have to tell you, is that there's been a lot of opposition, and I'm not sure there's been any of the community members in support of this, those folks that actually live in the neighborhood. The primary concerns of the neighborhood have been that the sidewalks, even with the additions as proposed, are inadequate, and that's especially true given the sharp curve on Rosebank Avenue, which just last month experienced a car crash in the early hours of the morning. So with that said, I would urge you to vote against this bill, and to reiterate what's already been said in terms of the community, large opposition to it and lack of any support for it from those people in the neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Westerholm.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I would move approval with a brief comment.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember.
Just wanted to mention a few things. As was mentioned earlier, this has been a long conversation. This has been a conversation about a property that is about 10 acres and has been vacant for most of everyone's lifetime. And any time that you've got a parcel to develop for the first time, it is a difficult proposition. I really appreciate the work that Josh and the Brooke have put in. I appreciate their efforts and their hard work with the Rosebank Neighborhood Association. And I'm not going to disagree with them to say that this is not something that is completely embraced by every member of the Rosebank community, because it's not. In my mind, though, it's always been a matter of this property is something that is going to be developed at some point in time. The existing zoning allows for, as you heard earlier, 53 units, I believe. The balance that you get, or the trade-off that you get, in my mind, for this project is a matter of addressing quality and quantity issues. With a little bit of additional quantity, the quality of the development, because of the input by the community, because of the ability to use the SP process to tweak the project in specific manners unique to the environment, the end result is something that I think is better and I think is appropriately served along those corridors. Eastland and Rosebank are main streets. I think that this is a place where an SP is an appropriate location. The connectivity that we were able to include in the SP is important. It is something that was important for everyone in the process. As was mentioned as well, far too many SPs in my mind that we see before us have a homogeneous housing product. This particular one contains 4 different sizes of housing product to try to keep the neighborhood able to offer price points at different places to maintain the diversity that everyone appreciates in East Nashville. That was something that neighbors were very interested in. That was something I was very interested in as well. It is a beautiful property. It is adjacent to the Cornelia Fort area. It is adjacent to the Shelby Bottoms Greenway, and protecting the view sheds of that area has been something that we've been able to do in a very thoughtful manner. This is also a project that is able to use dark sky compliant lighting to maintain even more visibility of the area at nighttime. I understand the concerns about traffic. I think that those are going to exist regardless of whether this is developed as an SP or as it's currently allowed to develop. But the way that property values are in most parts of our city, and especially in East Nashville, this property is going to develop at some point soon. And having the ability to use a public process where we've gone through what I think is now 11 months of conversations to get a product that offers the best use and the best result, I think, from the input of many people over many months, is an appropriate allowance to grant for 9 additional units. With that, I would renew my motion and ask for your support. Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-816 changes .43 acres from DTC to SP zoning for a portion of property located at the corner of Church Street and 5th Avenue North to permit a mixture of uses. Councilmember Stein.
On behalf of Councilwoman Gilmore, I request the public hearing be open.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. I saw a hand go up. Was that in opposition?
Just wait.
Okay. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Stein.
I would move approval on second reading.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-817 amends the Morgan Park Place Specific Plan District for properties located along 4th Avenue North, 5th Avenue North, and Van Buren Street to amend the caption of BL 2006-1037 to allow a total of 72 residential units, where 72 residential units were shown on the preliminary SP plan, but where 60 residential units were identified in the original council bill, and to eliminate a condition. Councilmember Stein.
For Councilwoman Gilmore again, I would request the public hearing be opened.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one on either side, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Stein.
I don't know what's so hard about this planning stuff. On behalf of Councilwoman Gilmore, I move approval on second reading.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Okay, we are now at resolutions on our consent agenda. Hang in there. I see a lot of yawns out there. We have one that is not on the consent agenda, and that is RS 2014-1109. 1141 through 1153 are on the consent agenda. I will read them, and as always, you can tell me if we need to pull any. The RS 2014-1141 approves the issuance of tax-exempt public improvement revenue refunding bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $20 million. 1142 appropriates funds from the Fund for Cities of Service, Inc. to the Mayor's Office for the change of Chestnut Home Energy Retrofit Project. 1143 approves a grant from the Frist Foundation to the Metro Arts Commission to create a mobile website to provide the opportunity to self-curate art sites. 1144 approves a grant from the State Department of Children's Services to Davidson County Juvenile Court to provide case management and probation services to children at high risk of state custody. 1145 approves an amendment to a grant from the State Department of Human Services to the Davidson County Juvenile Court to enforce federal and state mandated child support guidelines concerning children born out of wedlock. 1146 approves a grant from the State Department of Corrections to the state trial courts to fund the Davidson County Community Corrections Program. 1147 extends the date of the mandatory utilization of the Injury on Duty Clinic for non-emergency situations until January 1, 2015. 1148 approves an amendment to a grant from the Greater Nashville Regional Council to the Metro Social Services Commission for meal delivery and transportation services to eligible senior citizens and disabled persons. 1149 approves a grant from the State Department of Labor and Workforce Development to the Nashville Career Advancement Center to establish programs and deliver services to prepare youth for entry into the labor force. 1150 approves a grant from the State Department of Environment and Conservation to the Metro Public Works Department to provide assistance in maintaining and operating a permanent household hazardous waste collection site. 1151 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Larry Spurlock against Metro government in the amount of $10,000. 1152 recognizes the recent awards and accolades received by the Nashville International Airport. 1153 recognizes the YWCA of Nashville and Middle Tennessee for their efforts in standing against racism. Do any of these need to be pulled? I will need committee reports. Councilmember Stein.
On 1141, 1142, 1143, 1144, 1145, 1146, 1147, 1148, 1149, 1150, and 1151, budget and finance approved, 10-4, none against.
Thank you. Who is handling health and hospitals for Councilman Maynard? Councilman Harmon.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Health, Hospitals, and Social Services heard RS 2014-1148 and recommended approval 6-0.
Thank you. Councilmember Westerholm.
Personnel, Public Information, Human Relations, approved 4 in favor, 0 against.
Councilmember.
That was RS 2014-1147.
On both of them?
And 1149.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Dominic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. On RS 2014-1150, Public Works Committee approved 7-4 and 0 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Rules and Confirmations voted 5-4, 0 against, 1152, 1153. And with that, I move the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We'll go back to the first one that is not on the consent agenda. RS 2014-1109 approves the application fee for a contextual overlay. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to...
I need a couple of committee reports.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Stein.
Budget and Finance voted to defer for 2 meetings at the request of the sponsor, 10-4, none against.
And then Councilmember Hunt, your committee report.
Planning and Zoning voted to defer 3 meetings, 7-4, 0 against.
Thank you. And your motion is to defer?
The motion is deferred to track with Bill 770 and 771.
We have a motion to defer 3 meetings. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We have a late filed resolution. It approves the election of certain notaries public for Davidson County. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do I need to suspend the rules?
You need to ask to.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. May I ask to suspend the rules?
Is there any objection to a suspension of the rules? Seeing none, Councilmember
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to move approval.
We have a motion and a second.
And the committee report, I'm sorry, our committee voted 5-4, 0 against. And with that, I move approval.
We have a motion and a second and a committee report. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We now have another late filed resolution. Recognizes and congratulates Vanderbilt University Commodores baseball team and Coach Ten Corbin on winning the 2014 NCAA Division I National Championship.
Woo!
Councilmember Allen.
I would like to suspend the rules so we can do this now while they're still excited.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, Councilmember Allen.
So knowing that we will continue to be excited until we can actually have a reception and honor them in person, I would move for approval. Committee reports.
Councilmember Berry, do you have a committee report?
I do. Committee report 5-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes, and Councilman Stein is wearing his celebratory hat from the celebration. We're now at bills on introduction and first reading. Are there any of those that need to be pulled? Seeing none, is there a motion for their approval? Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. We're now at bills on second reading. BL 2014-771 amends Metro Zoning Code to create a contextual overlay district. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. Planning and Zoning approved 7-0 to defer for 2 meetings.
And that's your motion?
That is my motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-783 acquires a portion of property located at 864 Idlewild Drive for the construction of the Gibson Creek Equalization Facility. Councilmember Anthony Davis.
Committee reports.
Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and zoning approve Bill 783-740 against.
Councilmember Dominic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Public Works Committee approved Bill 783, 7-4-0 against.
Councilmember Stein.
Budget approved, 11-4, none against.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Ask for approval, please.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. 783 passes. 2014-818 amends the Metro Code regarding the approval of grants and the acceptance of donations. Councilmember Stein.
Budget and Finance approved 11-4, none against, and I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-819 amends the Metro Code pertaining to the definition of high weeds. Councilmember Anthony Davis.
Committee report, please.
Councilmember Moore.
Codes Fair and Farmers Market approved 4 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
It's not what you think. I'd like to move the amendment, please. Move the amendment, please.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment passes. Councilmember Davis.
Move as amended, please.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-820 authorizes Metro government to enter into a participation agreement with Carry-On Second Investment Partners to fund the operation and maintenance of a public pressure sewer extension at the Heron Point development. Councilmember Stein.
Committee reports.
Councilmember Dominic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Public Works Committee approved 820, 7-4, and 0 against.
Councilmember Stein.
Budget approved, 11-4, none against. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-770 amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to 2-family dwellings. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. Planning and zoning approved 7-4-0 against, and I move to approve. Defer, I'm sorry. I'm listening to her.
3 meetings?
I move the 3-meeting deferral.
We have a motion and a second for a 3-meeting deferral. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-776 amends the Metro Zoning Code to create the Music City Cultural Heritage Overlay District to 17.22 acres for property located on Broadway, 2nd Avenue North, and Printers Alley. Councilmember Stein.
Committee report.
Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and zoning voted to defer 1 meeting, 7-0.
Thank you, Councilmember Stein.
At the request of the sponsor, I move for a 1-meeting deferral.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion to defer passes. BL 2014-785 authorizes the acquisition of property at Cabot Drive unnumbered for construction of the Davidson Branch Equalization Facility. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, move approval with a brief explanation.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman?
Yeah, I just want to remind the body, this is the piece of legislation that I spoke of last meeting, that Metro Water has an understanding with the property owner that they're going to work and do some things in the future once they acquire this property. I just wanted it to be on the record again that Metro Water and the city has agreed to work with this property owner after they acquire this property, and I look forward to working with Metro Water to make sure that happens. With that being said, I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-789 approves a partnership agreement between EMS World Expo and Nashville Fire Department. Councilmember Stein.
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. 2014-790 authorizes the Department of Information Technology Services to accept the donation of 8 laptops from Dell Inc. Councilmember Stein.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-791 amends the Geographic Information System Street and Alley Centerline layer by abandoning right-of-way for a portion of McGavick Pike. Councilmember Claiborne.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before I move, I'd like to congratulate Council Lady Berry on her effective coaching of Councilman Stein in council district issues. I would move 791 for approval. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-792 abandons 447 linear feet of an existing 8-inch public sewer main and existing easement to construct 178 linear feet of an 8-inch sewer main and relocate 20 linear feet of 6-inch water main for properties located at 415 27th Avenue North, 27th Avenue North unnumbered, and 28th Avenue North unnumbered. Councilmember Langster.
Thank you. With all committee reports in, move for approval, please.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
BL 2014-793 abandons 620 linear feet of existing 8-inch public sewer main and easement and accepts 838 linear feet of 8-inch public sewer main and easement, replaces 110 linear feet of 8-inch public sewer main, and accepts 2 public fire hydrant assemblies for properties located at 2033 4002 Hillsborough Pike and 2035 Richard Jones Road. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All committee reports in. I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-794 accepts permanent and temporary easements for the Jefferson Street Stormwater Improvement Projects for various properties located along 14th Avenue North, 16th Avenue North, 17th Avenue North, Meharry Boulevard, and Jefferson Street. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All committee reports in. I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-795 accepts permanent and temporary easements for the Jamesboro Place Stormwater Improvement Project for properties located along Granny White Pike, Jamesboro Place, Jamesboro Court, Lone Oak Road, and Belmont Park Terrace. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All committee reports in. I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-796 grants a permanent easement to Piedmont Natural Gas Company for property owned by Metro Government. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Once again, all committee reports in. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. 2014-797 abandons retained easement rights in a former unnumbered alley for properties located at 1007 4th Avenue North, 408, 410, 411, 415 Jackson Court, and Jackson Court unnumbered. Councilmember Dominy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For those of us who remember what a record is, this is not a broken record. All committee reports in. I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Next,
BL 2014-798 abandons retained easement rights in a portion of the former right-of-way of 50 Avenue North for property located at 4912 Michigan Avenue. Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor?